taking a good minute. All right. Hey, folks. My bad. Listen, this ain't even a good excuse because I was listening to the OJs. I'm sorry. Stairway to Heaven was on. It was at the good part. I wasn't coming on until I finished hearing my song. Sorry. All right. So, let me say a few quick hellos, and then I got a few quick updates, and then this live will be a little bit more subtle because I'm really kind of just focused on the election, and maybe if we have some time, I'll jump into a few other things. But since I didn't get a chance to kind of respond and share my 2 cents on the election as everything was happening, this is kind of like playing catch-up mode. But it's actually a good thing because I feel like it gives you some time to really like sit and iron out all your thoughts, so you're just not on here going off and cussing people out all day. And first of all, it's been a crazy week anyway, right? So I think I told you guys I've been doing like a fundraiser program for one of the centers that is like a sister center to my old center where I work with the kids. So, we had that event on Thursday. And then in my actual real job, I was the chair of like a really huge event within the company that, I was pretty much the chair, like the person in charge. And the crazy part is that event was the day after the election. Like, do you know how chaotic it is to go to work the day after an election? The whole room is tense, right? So you had that going on. I had a coworker who, unfortunately, this is a coworker from when I was still working with the kids who died, right? And they were only a few years older than me, right? They weren't even, I think they were 38 or 39. So their funeral was Friday. I didn't go to the funeral. It was just too much, right? And I knew it was giving me flashbacks to when one of the kids from my center passed away. Like if you follow me long enough, I told you the story about I had one kid who had a brain tumor that nobody really knew about until the last minute. And then unfortunately he passed away. So having to go to that funeral was just horrible. I pray you never have to witness a parent bury their child. And then it's the kids are going and they're seeing it. It was horrible. So I didn't go to this service because I didn't want to see the kids crying that, their favorite staff member had transitioned out. It's been a week, right? Anyway, so that's why I had the OJs playing today. OJs were taking me there, right? One of my favorites. All right, let me do a few hellos and then we'll jump right into everything. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Sorry. So book club people, I'm so sorry, but I will not be in town on the 18th. So we have to just push to the following Monday, right? I'm so sorry, book club people. So the 25th, it will be our next book club session. We are reading chapters 9 through, just count 8 chapters. It's like I forgot what I said on the thing. Let me pull it up real quick just to make sure I got it right for y'all. I'm sorry. I'm working. Y'all know my work is never done. I'm always working on something. So there's another project I'm doing, and we're doing some logistics and stuff for it. So I'll be out of town. I didn't even put when the next set is, but just start after page 52. There we go. Start after page 52, and whatever chapter it stops around 102 somewhere in there. I think that's about 8 chapters. We'll get the right stuff anyway. And then, like I said, I'll schedule the Zoom party for some time in December. Y'all can thank Avocado Queen for that one because I totally meant to lock that in. Okay, let me do a few hellos and we'll talk the election. What up, D. Bradford? What up, what up, what up? Darius Love said the one we've been waiting for. I know it's been a rough 6 days, Calvin. I know you got a lot to say. Yeah, it's a good thing I'm coming on here almost a week later. Boy, if y'all would have got me on Wednesday. Let's see. Record Store Diva said, I know my internet nephew is going to come with receipts. Yeah, let's see. Rhea P said, I'm exhausted. It's like we did that 4-year bid and then we went out, committed the same crime and got the same damn sentence. It's only going to be worse. It's a lot going on, right? Man, Lord, give us all the strength. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and start, guys, just for the sake of time. Anyway, thank you guys for hopping on. By the way, I'm sure we'll probably have a few trolls in here. Now, y'all know I don't really respond and entertain none of that, so please don't worry about my feelings being hurt by anything that anybody says in the chat. It doesn't ever get to me. After you've had a channel for as long as I've had, like, not much can really shake you. So, it is what it is. Okay, so actually, I need a sip of water first. I just need to, man, that OJ's was really hitting. I wish I had a voice like Eddie Levert. Okay. Gee, the sirens are ringing. Ain't that symbolic? So before we even get to the election, I want to just backtrack to talk about how we even got to this point, right? Because in all reality, as we know at this point, Orange man has won, right? But in all reality, it should have gotten to a place where he never should have even had the option to run. But can we backtrack and just talk about how we even got to that space, right? Remember how I kept saying lately on these lives, I kept talking about cause and effect, right? I kept talking about how at this point we've been around long enough, especially those who've been subscribed here. You've been around long enough and paid enough attention over the past few years to see cause and effect, to see what happens when certain things are signed into legislation and how it affects people, to see how people collectively are going to respond to different things that take place within our politics, to see what happens around the world and how it affects us over here, right? Like at this point, we've been having the cause and effect conversation, but we've also been having the conversation about giving an inch, right? And how I kept saying that we got into this era where there were all these different offenses that would take place and people would brush it off like, oh, it's not a big deal, not a big deal. And before you know it, we got a million not a big deals. And so what ends up happening is you give so many inches that at this point, they have enough space to run a marathon with how much space you've given them in regard to foolery and nonsense. So let's go on back to this idea of cause and effect, because if people want my honest opinion about what I think about the results, to me, it all centers specifically on race and gender, but mainly race. Gender was one piece of it, but race really is all of it for me. We can come back at the end of my rant about what y'all want to say about what could have been done with policy and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, to me, this was centered on race. And this is kind of an ongoing conversation and more so tying back to what I've been saying about the idea of cementing and making sure that that status quo is never challenged. And when it is challenged, the idea of doubling down to make sure that it stays in place with regard to the old guard. And that old guard, as we know, is pretty much the idea of white supremacy running the show, white nationalism running the show, anti-blackness running the show, anti-everything else but whoever is white running the show. So getting to my point, if you haven't noticed, in the past 8 to 10 years, our politics has become very, very tribal. I've been saying that for the last few lives as well, right? When you just look at the differences between now and even like the 1990s, there was always bipartisan disagreements, right? There was always going to be Republicans versus Democrats and whoever else. But it got to the point where we're in an era where it wasn't even really politics. It was the narrative of us versus them. Now, and when I'm saying us versus them, I'm talking about how the people look at things, right? This idea of like good guys and bad guys. That's kind of what politics became. Painting one group to just be the scum of the earth and the other group to be, you know, God's chosen ones. And then on the flip side, the other side sees it the same way, but just with them in the other position, right? And so we've been living in this era of political extremities, right? And we've just kind of been living under the guise of what I call reactive policy and reactive movements that are, again, centered in white nationalism and kind of disguised as patriotism, or I would take family values, or, you know, Christian values, right? So we've just seen the influx of chaos and craziness over the past few years with regard to just how Americans operate in this moment. People always try to say like Barack Obama was the most divisive president. And I never saw him as that, because I always saw him as somebody who never really talked race to begin with. He kind of stayed away from it. However, he couldn't escape what he looked like, and he couldn't escape what his wife and his kids looked like, and what his mother-in-law looked like, and even what the dogs looked like. And so when people always said divisive, I always was like, where? Because other than the one time that he said Trayvon Martin, if he had a son, would look like, you know, Trayvon, as far as Barack Obama having a son, it's the only time we ever heard him really talk race. But again, we're just in this weird space. So I want to backtrack, right? So can we go back to November 4th, 2008, all right? Barack Obama gets in there, and I say this is what you call the new wave of what you called fear and rage coming from white America. Because what happens during that November after he's elected? Well, we have a 42% increase in background checks for firearms, because everybody's going to get a gun, right? Everybody's going to get a gun. As a matter of fact, right? So in that November of 2004, you had 1,529,636 applications for background checks in order to purchase a gun, right? Now, at the time, the average was about 1,080,000, right? But we almost did about close to, you know, we said 42% with background checks. Now, mind you, that doesn't include private sales, and that doesn't include internet sales, right? We'll come back to that in a second. So then we fast forward to November 2012. He gets reelected. What happens again? All right, 39% increase in gun sales. It wasn't, at this point, we're not even talking about the background checks, because they've already gotten the background check from the first round. They said we need to double up, right? And so here comes the gun purchases again, right? And you're seeing the increase in purchases with weapons, especially like AR-15s, right? Oh, they love it, loading up, right? Stores are out of stock, right? And so, like we were saying, going back to even the conversation of guns. Now, some people were going to say, oh, no, well, the gun sales skyrocketed because they were afraid that Democrats were going to take the guns. When in reality, no, that's not the case. Because if we want to do the numbers, right, we remember the Brady bill passed in 1993, right? This was Bill Clinton's bill with the whole idea of like gun safety laws, and it became law in 1994. And it was specifically a piece where it kind of talked about, again, background checks, having the 5-day wait, a few different things like that. And so can we talk numbers for 1 second? Now, hold on, let me pull back my other numbers just to make sure I said this right. All right, so like we said, remember, November 4th, or November 2008, I'm sorry, right? 1.5 million background check applications. That's just background checks. That's not purchases. That's not the private sales. That's not the internet sales. That's just the people legally going through the process of trying to own a weapon, right? So we said 1.5 million. Now, when we're talking about Clinton coming out of 94 with the Brady bill, right? And this is putting regulations on guns and everything else like that. Between March 1st of 1994 and all of 1996, there were 7.8 million background checks on weapons. Now let's do the math. That's almost 2 years and some change, right? And what's crazy too, with that 7.8 million, there was only 173,000 rejections with background checks. Now, when we do the math, technically that's about 236,000 background applications per month. And this is after Bill has introduced legislation to cut back on gun regulation and everything else like that, or not cut back on gun regulation, but enhance more gun regulation and making it a little bit harder for people to get guns and everything else like that. And with that bill, the 5-day thing kind of got cut down after 1998. You saw the ban on like the semi-automatics, but that expired in 2004, which is why after 2004 you start seeing all these mass shootings just skyrocket again. But anyway, I said all that to say, what did we say about November 2008? 1.5 million applications versus an entire period from March 1st of 94 to the end of 96, where you only had 236,000 applications a month, right? And so it had nothing to do with gun control. This was a combination of fear and rage because they saw somebody that didn't look like them who was now going to be in office. What that man represented was the idea of change. Now, politically, no matter where you stand, you can have whatever opinion you want to have on his term. But when we're talking symbolically, what that meant to white America, that meant, oh my God, one of these people that made it through the door, they weren't supposed to make it this far. Oh my God, and look at his wife. She's all the way black. Oh, like the rage, right? The rage was there. Now, here's the issue. When you have fear and you have rage, what's the next thing people are always going to do? Bring in the power, right? Utilize the power to ensure that they get whatever it is that they want, right? And so they got to do something about it. And so this is why we end up seeing what happens during Obama's term. So, he has his first 2 years. He has a supermajority, right? He gets the House, the Senate. The Supreme Court was pretty balanced at the time. And yeah, he was able to, at one point, finally get the Affordable Care Act through, which we've told that story. He really was trying to do this reach across the aisle thing, and he tried to make the bipartisan committee and try to include both Republicans and Democrats within the creation of the Affordable Care Act. And Republicans, with this wonderful bipartisan committee he created, they added 200 amendments to this bill. 200 things they wanted to change to the Affordable Care Act. All kind of things that would have been great. Get rid of that. This has to go. No, you can't keep. No, that got to go. Scratch it. What? Nope. This can go. That can go. 200 amendments, right? Barack was trying to do the thing where, and I feel like he only did this because of the conversation of race. He recognized that because of how he looked, right? He was always going to have an uphill battle. So he's going to have to actually overextend himself to try to appease the very demographic people who don't want him in there to begin with. So he does all that. 200 amendments added to this Affordable Care Act bill. Now, mind you, he didn't even need Republicans because he had a supermajority in the House and in the Senate, right? But still, he does this bipartisan stuff. They bring it up for a vote. How many Republicans actually voted for it? 0. So you ended up sabotaging what could have been some super, super great policy, right? Because you wanted to try to be friends with everybody. You wanted to try to extend the olive branch. And this is still in the era of post-racial America, where we kept looking at race as something that was far, far, far beyond us, right? It's so far in the past. It's back when pictures were still in black and white. We don't have that problem anymore. Everybody gets along. I mean, look at the cast of I was about to say Friends, but that ain't the best example. Look at the cast of Modern Family, right? And so you have that. So then what happens? Now here comes this retaliation. As people were in celebratory mode because, yay, Barack got in, everything's all fine and dandy, there were others waiting on deck for the midterms. They couldn't wait. Oh, they couldn't wait because you know what that means? Here comes that conversation of, again, fear, rage, and power. they have the power to do something about it. And they're going to show us in these midterms. So what happens during the 2010 midterms, right? Republicans come in there and sweep up, right? Now, before Barack Obama left office, when he came into office, there were 27 states that had full legislatures where it was like their state house, the state Senate was run by Democrats. By the time he got out of office, it was down to 13. But then when we get to the House and the Senate, right? So in that 2010 midterm, Democrats lost 63 House seats. 63. Okay, you looking at this current election right now, right? Right now, I don't know if they've declared who has the House yet, but it's really close between Democrats and Republicans. Right now, Republicans still have it, but there's a slim chance Democrats might be able to take it, right? That's a handful of seats. Compared to going back to 2010, we said 63 seats. 63 people get ousted, right? And then in the Senate, 6 seats are lost. And then when we go to the 2014 midterms, White America said we're going to double down to make sure that the message wasn't lost. And then Democrats lose another 13 House seats and another 9 Senate seats, right? So it's that idea of putting power to the raise. They're going to make sure this man will never get anything done. We're going to make sure that we make an example out of him and make sure that this never happens again. He will never come back in office and have a shot. And what ends up happening is you see the emergence of people who it's not about wanting to help Americans or wanting to make the country become even better than what it is or what it could be and investing in the people. It was about, we're going to dedicate the next few years to stopping everything he has. Think about that meeting that took place with like Newt Gingrich and all of them, where they said their main objective was to stop Obama at all costs, make him not only a one-term president, but in his one term, make sure he can't get anything done. That is not fueled by partisanship. That is fueled by race, okay? Because understand, Clinton got in office, there was no conversation about shutting him down because at this point, Republicans have been in power for 12 years, 2 Reagan terms, 1 Bush term. Republicans weren't crazy over Clinton, but they had no problem working with Clinton. This is still the era where you still had some element of bipartisan stuff getting done together, right? Anyway, so you see the movement of what you call, whatchamacallit, pretty much, what was that thing called? Oh, the GOP's no compromise pledge. No compromise. We're not budging. We're not trying to hear nothing you got to say. Everything that you bring to the table, the answer is no. Again, this is not rooted in policy. This is rooted in, again, maintaining the status quo. This is rooted in, again, making sure that when we're talking about race, the demographic that feels that they run the world can continue to feel that they run the world, no matter who is the face of power in this country as far as the executive branch. That's what that was all about. Then we get the Tea Party, right? Tea Party comes in. Again, this is not a conversation about wanting to make the country better or help people with taxes or the working class or the working poor. This was, let's get in there and just tear up everything. It's not even about the people at this point. We're just going to destroy it all. Got to make an example. And this is when you start seeing the influx of people coming into positions of power that really weren't qualified for it. You start seeing people coming into positions of power that have vendettas and agendas that have nothing to do with policy. People who come into office and for the entire duration of their time in office, they never introduce any bills. They don't do anything. They just stand in the way and block everything, right? And so we have that. And then just some of the names that come out of this Tea Party movement. Now, these people wouldn't have all come into office after the 2010 midterms, but these are all people who, to an extent, either came out of the Tea Party or have associations with the Tea Party or were elected, right? And I'm only going to name a few because we ain't got all day. But you got Ron Johnson, Ted Cruz, Texas. Why? Texas, I just knew, if anything, y'all was going to at least push Cruz on out of there, but good luck. Ken Paxton, all right? Texas, that attorney general that y'all got over there. Marsha Blackburn out of Tennessee. Tim Scott, who didn't even run, he was appointed, right? He got the slide in the door and he still acted a fool. Michelle Bachmann. She's been done with. They kind of pushed her out. She lost a few elections. We ain't seen her in a while. Jeff Landry, that's the current Louisiana governor, right? Bill Cassidy, Rand Paul out of Kentucky, who's been in the way since forever and a day. Joe Walsh, Matt Gaetz, right? I'll stop there. But you have all these people who started coming into power. And again, rather than seeing them actually implement and get anything done, they came up in there and wasted time. They came up in there and played games. They came up there and they latched on the culture wars. They came in there and they continued to allow corruption to take place, all in the name of patriotism, passing it off as that, when in reality it was centered in the idea of, again, maintaining that idea of white nationalism, maintaining that idea of ensuring that the current system that's in place stays in place by any means necessary. So turning a blind eye to the things that really matter, turning a blind eye to your actual constituents. You know what I mean? So that's why your whole state ain't got no power because it's a big giant freeze and you went to Mexico, right? Crazy. And white America allowed it, right? Going back to that conversation of giving an inch, white America was fine because for a lot of people in white America, they felt these people are giving it to whoever they want to have beef with. They're giving it to Barack Obama and to the people that support him and his coalitions, and giving it to them liberals and the college students and the young kids, giving it to all of them. Yeah, right. And so you're watching people continue to vote against their own interests, election after election after election. Then we fast forward to what I call the era of 2010 to about 2015. Hold on, I got to take a sip of this water. Hold on. I feel like I'm in church preaching. You know, the pastor be taking that sip, and then he start yelling some more. I'm not going to be yelling, no. Right? So then 2010, about 2015. Now we're at the era of what we call new shenanigans, right? And so it's similar to the political chaos that we saw in the 90s, but it's rooted in tribalism. Because understand, in the 90s, there was still political chaos. There was definitely a government shutdown in 96, right? There were definitely different things that took place. But again, if you're talking about politicians in the 90s, they actually kind of were somewhat fearful of the voters. They kind of were somewhat fearful of losing their seats. They kind of were somewhat fearful of people questioning their integrity. Those days have long gone, right? We're now 2010 to 2015. That's not a thing anymore. Anything goes, right? And again, the idea was to make an example out of Obama. And so, like I said, that era of bipartisanship is really gone for real now. You are not going to see any more collective bargaining between the two parties to really get anything done. And so we see that Barack Obama's term kind of ends up being something where not a lot gets done. And at the end of his second term, he has to just do things by executive order to get things done. That starts a new narrative. Now he's a tyrant. He's an authoritarian. He's going against the will of the people, right? So just remember all these things that I'm saying, because all of this is bubbling and building up to get us to 2024, right? And so, you know, these politicians have no problem just stirring up the shenanigans at the expense of the people, right? And they try to justify it as protecting us, the citizens, which you can't find any justification for any of it. So there's all these random things that happen, right? We have government shutdowns, right? You have the 2013 government sequestration, right? Which also included cuts to Medicaid, because their definition or their excuse was, oh, well, we got to find ways to cut the spending. They're just spending too much. This is when they kept saying the narrative of kicking the can down the road. They always got terms, right? When it's some nonsense, kicking the can. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. We got to make these cuts. These are significant. And really, if there were going to be cuts, it wasn't going to need to be with the social programs that actually benefited the people. No disrespect to those in the military. Happy Veterans Day. But the military budget, it won't hurt from a few minor cuts here and there. But instead, they cut all the things from the people. But I will say, with that 2013 sequestration, there was still some cuts with the military as well. And yeah, so you had that going on. Right. And so, like I said, by this time, we're now seeing the divorce of what you call a post-racial America, right? The U.S. and post-racialness is done. That conversation of race being a thing of the past is now in our face, right? Race is not a thing of the past. It's in our face. We're seeing it all the time. You're seeing the police killings of Black individuals. We saw America's response to Trayvon Martin and how he's vilified, right? How he was painted to be somebody deserving of what happened to him. How there were news articles written saying, he was, with that, and then news articles being written, and then Mike Brown, same thing, right? And articles being written about Mike Brown, and he was no angel, right? All these different things that are stirring up what we call that ugly conversation of race in the United States. Because again, up until the time that Barack Obama got in office, the conversation of race was suppressed in this country. It was painted as it's just feelings, right? Racism and all that is just when somebody doesn't like anybody. Just don't give power to it. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. And so that's how we moved, right? And folks kind of had a blind eye to the policy that was happening at the same time, right? So race is a conversation that's kind of bubbling over now, right? We saw the gutting of the Voting Rights Act in 2013, right? We saw the attacks on affirmative action, right? Now, they weren't successful between 2010 and 2015, but they would be later down the line, right? That's Abby Fisher, pissed off because she ain't got into a school that she didn't qualify for. She didn't meet the credentials to be into the program that would have granted her automatic access to this university, and she felt it must be because somebody else is in her seat. Now, fortunately, at that time, we had a different lineup on the Supreme Court, so affirmative action was actually protected in that moment in time. But we're now entering phase one of what you call the culture wars in the United States, right? Think about, and it wasn't as intense as it is now, but just think about the things taking place. Think back to Michelle Obama and her initiative, because every first lady has some initiative that they take on, right? Nancy Reagan, hers was drugs. Just say no. Just say, they even had a song, Just Say No, a song with LaToya Jackson on it. I said, no wonder all the kids doing drugs. Y'all playing games out here, but just say no, right? So they had that, much love to LaToya. But they had that, I think, Laura Bush, hers was reading, right? I forgot what Hillary Clinton's was. I want to say Hillary Clinton's was healthcare for kids. I can't remember. Somebody can correct me in the chat. And then Michelle Obama's was healthy foods for the kids, right? tackling childhood obesity. But then what did we end up seeing? You'd see somebody like Sarah Palin have a rally and show up with a pan of cookies, right? To try to paint this idea of who does she think she is, trying to tell us what to feed our children, when in reality, these were just suggestions on how to ensure that kids could be healthy, right? That was it, right? But we start to see again those culture wars, right? And so at this point, politicians can get away with so much more. You know, they're starting to push the envelope of what used to be deemed offensive. They're starting to say things that used to be something that would get people fired. Think about Trent Lott back in the early 2000s. Remember, he was hanging with the racist Klan member and said the stuff about, well, you know, if things were like how they used to be, this country would be a whole lot better. And they got him out of there so fast. Trent, you got to go. Done. We don't play that. By the time we get to 2010 and 2015, you're seeing people be given an inch and an inch and an inch, where things that are pretty much racist as hell, right, are not getting the kind of flack it should get, not getting the kind of kickback, not getting the disassociation from other members in the cabinets and in Congress as it should, because people are like, oh, it's not a big deal. Y'all are overreacting. You're getting soft, right? And we're also seeing, again, the idea of like politicians just even becoming more outlandish with their viewpoints. Think about like Todd Aiken when we're having a conversation of women's reproductive rights. And he was the guy that brought up the conversation of legitimate rape, right? You know, a woman can't get pregnant from a rape unless it's like a legitimate one. Because he was saying, he said that the woman's body has a special technology inside of it that rejects whatever has intruded. And it will reject any, you know, aggression from an attacker. So no, if she becomes pregnant, it's because she liked it, right? That is starting to become normalized within our political discourse, where there's not a lot of kickback, where people can say these crazy things and still be reelected. And then at the same time, social media has repurposed, right? We're transitioning from the era of all of us on MySpace doing a little coding, trying to, you know, I remember when me and my friends used to fight, I would use my MySpace page, whatever song was playing, it was going to be a message. So there's one girl that I used to kind of talk to on and off, and then we'd be fighting and breaking up and fighting and breaking up some more. Donnell Jones better start talking. Every time she got on my nerves, you know what, let me code this thing. Show you. We used to be coding that thing and put the little graphics so the pictures could slide across that MySpace page and slide up and down. And I'd have that Donald Jones better start talking playing. Boom, handled, right? We've gone from that to now social media is changing. The narrative is changing. We already know the Cambridge Analytica stuff, the research we talked about with that some lives ago. Facebook is now becoming what it is now. Right? I can't even do Facebook. I pop in every now and then, but Facebook is another planet, right? So you're just seeing so many things change, right? And in addition to that, Twitter is becoming a thing. So there's so much shifting in the political climate of the United States, where US politics will never be what it once was, because there's so many Pandora's boxes that have been opened and so many things that have changed, right? And then we see what happens with the Supreme Court, right? Barack Obama has a nominee. What do they say? Too close to the election. Right now, mind you, we got months before the election. McConnell said, we're not doing that. Too close to an election. We're not going to do it. And so Merrick Garland doesn't get in. Honestly, he ain't need to get in because you see how he's been moving, right? And so at this point, race is no longer an entity that's kind of kept behind closed doors and it's also not something that's as controlled in the media, because now it's in our face. Like we said, social media is here. Content creators are starting to have these conversations about race. Who remembers Francesca, I can't think of her last name, when she did the video, like it was S-word, white girls say to black girls. And it's like this clip of like, it's her with the blonde wig. And she's saying all these racist things that a white girl says to her black friend, right? But she doesn't realize it's racist. You know, she's like, oh, you know, Tyrone Jenkins, you know, she's looking at like, I think Facebook. I don't know. He's black. You know, all these different random things like, oh, you know, can I touch your hair? It sort of feels like Cheetos. And, you know, I'm practically black, twinsies, all these different things, right? Things like this are becoming more common to the point where that video goes viral. She ends up on the Anderson Cooper. Remember, he had a talk show at one point in time for like a year. And people are foaming at the mouth mad about that. But now we're in a space where places like YouTube and Twitter and even the forums, conversations about race are shifting, where people are really having honest conversations. And even our television and our shows are changing. Blackish, which I don't see as a super revolutionary show, but it's a show that highlights the elements and conversations of race, right? Lots of different things taking place in shows like Blackish and a bunch of different programs where race is starting to be in the forefront. And it's not being presented as it's a problem, but it's just highlighting that, hey, this is a country that has however many millions of people, and you have people from all these various backgrounds, and we're coming to the era of what you called representation. The era of letting voices be heard. However, when it comes to the status quo in white America, they're not trying to hear that. They're not trying to hear this. That's too much. What is Michelle Obama rapping on Sesame Street for? Absolutely not, right? So you're starting to see the rage and everything else kick in like that, right? And so at the same time, with like the emergence of social media and what's happening with movies and stuff, white America is seeing in real time what other people think about them, right? White America is seeing in real time the opinions about themselves that they've never heard before. This is why race became such a hard conversation to have, because here you have demographics of people, specifically Black folks, who have researched, who have lived this, who have been ready to have these conversations, and they're just pounding it on. And white America doesn't even have the range to even they don't even know where they're coming with it. What are you talking about? Whoa, man. I mean, honestly, Michael Jackson has a song called Man in the Mirror. Maybe you need to just look in the mirror. And so you're having these conversations of structure and policy versus feelings for years, right? And the feelings brigade is getting their feelings hurt because they don't have the range for these conversations. This is how, like, pretty much every YouTuber that you follow right now that talks race, whether it's me or like Tarian Reloaded or like all these different people that have, you know, platforms, or even some of the different movements that are out there with regard to like Black politics, most of them got their jump during this 2010 to 2015 era, right? This is when most of them started kicking the door down. This is when it was like everybody, it's like we're all kind of seeing what the other's doing and seeing how much more we can kick the door down. Because if you notice, like, I've always talked race on this channel, but I feel like in those early years, I kind of walked on the eggshells just a tiny bit because I was afraid YouTube was going to get me out of here, right? And so a lot of times I used to be nervous just to say white. I used to be like, Americans just got to do a better job, right? Even I did a video in 2017 when Trump got elected the first time, and I said America's downfall is going to be Americans. And really what I meant was America's downfall is going to be white folks. But anyway, we're getting somewhere. Stay with me, folks. But anyway, so all these different things are happening, right? And so television's changing. Music is becoming thought-provoking. People are passing out because Beyonce did Formation at the Super Bowl, and they, oh my God. I think I told you before when I was still in my old job, my boss was trying to find something for all of us to do. And at the time, Beyonce had just announced the Formation tour. And I was like, oh, can we like get, you know, Beyonce tickets? Because we always had company tickets to every concert. Like, we had company tickets to see Usher. They gave us tickets for Katy Perry. I didn't go, but they gave us tickets. Like, it was all these different shows and stuff we had tickets to. And so I was like, oh, I know they got Beyonce tickets. So I asked Boss Lady, like, hey, can we get Beyonce tickets? The one white person who also claimed to be Cherokee at the time, that's why that'd be another conversation for later. He goes, I don't support cop killers. I'll say, okay. All right. Okay. All right. So anyway, this is the climate that we're in, right? White America's getting frustrated. They don't like all these new changes and these conversations and people getting bold and stepping out of place. They shaking the table too much, and they talking about this police brutality, and there's these protests, and it's all these folks that don't want to hear this, and so on and so forth. And then just in the nick of time, guess who comes down the escalator? Right? Just in the nick of time. Here comes Orange Man. He comes down that escalator, shakes the table, says all the Orange Man stuff that he says, and then we're in for a whirlwind. Now, initially, America doesn't know how to respond to this, right? Because they're going back to the old guard where, wait a minute, this is too far. Now, this man then said the Mexicans aren't bringing their best and they're bringing the rapists. We got to do something. So what happens? Macy's pulls the plugs on his Trump line. Remember, he had the Trump ties, like the ties. They pulled the plug on that. NBC cancels The Apprentice, and they swap him out with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And the show became so terrible after that. There's all these different things that take place, right? And the interesting thing, Wolfgang Puck, right? He was building the Trump Hotel out here. Wolfgang Puck was like, I will not be catering your little raggedy hotel. I ain't doing it. Find somebody else, right? So all these things start coming out. And what's interesting is he is unapologetic about it. Okay, what? And what? Yeah, I said it. What you gonna do about it, right? In that moment, for white America, they see the element of empowerment through his actions and through how he moves. And from that moment on, nothing he would ever say or do would ever be too much, right? Because at the end of the day, people saw themselves in him. A lot of people in white America saw themselves in him. And also folks sprinkled in with different demographics, but specifically white America, he was the epitome of whiteness. And because he was also wealthy, right, people saw that he can get folks to prosperity. They saw him as a prosperity man, and they started shifting how politics would work. Now he was the blue collar billionaire. I said, I ain't never heard of that in my life, but okay, right? And so there's all these different things that happen, right? You know, there's the grab the girl by the you know what and everything. You would have thought that would have ended the campaign. Nah, didn't matter. The only thing it did was, oh boy, that worked on the show on for the network got fired for Access Hollywood, but Trump got elected, right? So he gets in office, knocks it out the park, right? Hillary's out of there, right? Now, there were a whole lot of flaws within Hillary's campaign and things they probably should have done differently, but honestly, I feel like he was going to have it either way, right? He was still going to win. Because for me, with a lot of white America, they saw Hillary as an extension of Obama, right? They saw that as an extension of there's going to be more black faces in spaces that we don't want them to be in. There's going to be more faces of different groups that are not white that are going to be in spaces we don't want them to be in. There's going to be more access for different groups of people that we feel are beneath us that aren't supposed to have what we have. And at the same time, you're watching the wealth gap expand between rich and poor, also between black and white. But you see a lot of working class white Americans who feel that they've lost everything. So when they see somebody like a Michelle Obama, who has a law degree and her husband's a lawyer too, and they became president, they have what was supposed to be for me. The hell did they do? You know, something is wrong in this country, right? And so there were a lot of people who knew that this was never going to happen again. As a matter of fact, think back to 2012 when Obama was reelected. Remember all those pictures of the people crying at the Romney party? Now, I know folks will say, well, we saw the pictures of people crying when Kamala lost. To me, the pictures look a little different, right? So I saw some of the pictures from Kamala's concession speech. And you saw the little tears with the college students and stuff. Them 2012 pictures at that rally, I mean, I just remember the white lady that had fell and leaned into her. I think she leaned into the husband. She was just going through it. The kids were crying. Like, you would have swore that Barack Obama was about to put everybody in camps the way that these folks were losing. And I was like, from that moment, I was like, these people have never forgotten how they felt that night. And they're going to make sure that we remember, right? So then we fast forward 2016 to the present, right? And we saw the kind of hold that Trump has had over politicians and over establishments, right? Where he could do whatever he wants to no avail, right? Integrity has gone out the window with a lot of people in politics, right? Look, Ted Cruz is my favorite one to kind of whack a little bit. I'm like, this man cooked your wife and called her ugly. And you know, I was pressed. I went to go look at a picture to see what she looked like. But anyway, called the man's wife ugly. He's never said anything about it, right? As a matter of fact, he endorsed the man. And then he even said that the man's dad killed JFK. Still endorsed the man, right? But you watch all these politicians who just let all the things slide that Orange Man continues to do, right? You know, a man who says 30,573 lies in his first term, right? I don't even know how you can lie that much. That takes a lot of work, but no one cared because, again, they saw the power there. Remember that conversation of fear, rage, and power? This is the era of power. So by power, sure, let them do whatever, because the good thing is we're getting all our people in the door, right? We're getting what it is that we want. And again, that conversation of cementing, we're getting the judges that we want. We're getting the policy that we want. We were even able to change the tax code. Paul Ryan introduces his tax cuts in 2017. It becomes law in 2018. We're winning. It's great. And we can give working class white Americans the illusion that they're winning too through the illusion of whiteness and make them think that they're a part of this too. When in reality, you're still seeing the wealth gap get further and further between wealthy and rich. And you're also still seeing it get further and further between rich and poor, right? We see what happens. January 6th happens, nothing. And what's so funny about January 6th, you watched a bunch of GOP members jump off ship and jump right back on it about 2 weeks later, right? Remember Lindsey Graham was like, this is enough. I've had enough. 2 weeks later, well, you know, this was a movement about the frustrations of Americans, and you know, they were just having peaceful protest. You just watch the game change, right? And so again, you start watching where there were opportunities to nip this in the butt, and they didn't. The Senate had 2 opportunities to convict him. What did Mitch McConnell say? We're not convicting him. So even after we said, and everybody knew, that's the crazy part. At this point in time, everybody knew with both impeachments that he was not going to be convicted in the Senate. We knew he'd be, you know, the House would do it because the House had the majority, but Republicans had the majority in the Senate, and we knew they're not budging. Mitt Romney was the only one that went against the party, but we knew nobody's budging. Everybody knew. So we sat and we watched hours upon hours of footage and testimony and affidavits, and it's kind of like, this is actually really interesting, but we already know what's about to happen. And what happened? Nothing, right? Merrick Garland had 4 years to handle things as the Attorney General. He waited until the very, 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 very last minute to finally start doing something, right? Which is why I said it's probably a good thing he wasn't on the Supreme Court either, because he just been sorry as I don't know what. But when you're talking about the investigations and everything else, he took his sweet time, right? And so by the time we get to 2024, this man is eligible to run for president again, which is crazy to me. I got to take another sip of water. So yeah. So now we get to 2024, right? And like we said, this is a very different political climate, right? Like we said, 2012, we talked about the tears. People said they'll never forget, so on and so forth. When you look at 2016, I think one of the things about 2016, when you talk about Trump versus Hillary, for people who were supporters of Trump, Trump represented something new. It was almost like the same way people saw Obama versus McCain, right? So with Obama versus McCain, people saw Obama as something new, something different from the traditional. Finally, we get something else because McCain was already talking about we about to go in Iran too. I was like, we about to be in 3 wars? McCain, please, right? So in 08, everybody's like, okay, something different. And Obama ran on change, right? That was the move. 2016. Now, there's that big ugly factor of racism in this element, but at the same time, Trump represented something so different from what was there. He wasn't a career politician. For a lot of people in white America, they saw themselves in him. They saw Hillary as, again, an extension of Obama, and Trump was able to run with that. Honestly, I will say of the 3 Trump campaigns that have been run, I feel like his best campaign, even though all of them were chaotic to me, would have been 2016. To me, that's when he was the least unhinged. But yeah, he was able to run on that. He was able to run on, well, Hillary, you got ties to all this for 40 years and y'all didn't do nothing. That was the narrative that was put out there. He was able to latch onto a bunch of different things, right, and put it out there. And because he didn't play the game like the other politicians didn't know how to move with him. They had no idea what to do. When I think back to that first debate, and Megyn Kelly's like, you called women, whatever he said, or whatever he said. He's like, no, that was Rosie O'Donnell. And as soon as I heard that first laugh from the crowd, I said, oh yeah, they're in for it, right? And all these Republican nominees just could not stand in a room with this man because he represented something new. So that to me was what 2016 was in regard to like the climate that was there, right? Plus again, Barack had just had 2 terms and everything, and people were like, all right, it kind of happens sometimes when you've had a president successfully have 2 terms. People kind of want to get something different. We saw that with Clinton. He has 2 terms, Al Gore doesn't get in. Now, Reagan was able to do it, and Bush was able to slide through the door. But you just kind of see the shifts that take place. Then we get to 2020 election, right? Chaotic times. We're in a pandemic, right? The culture wars have kicked into the next gear, right? You got that going on. The economy is all over the place. There's all these different things. And so Joe gets in, right? But Joe gets in and people think the election is stolen. And people never leave that and never let it go, right? They hold on to it, right? And it brings us into 2024, right? By the time we get to 2024, all the cards are right there for Trump to walk right back in the door, right? And again, because you now have, again, pissed off white folks. And so what is interesting to me, because now I'm kind of going to the actual election, around 2022 was the time that I thought Trump's time was going to be up. And I say that because, and this is what I thought, right? I'll get to when I felt like, okay, there's going to be a shift here. And I said that because in the 2018 midterms, Democrats laid Republicans out, right? 2022 midterms did the same thing, right? There was supposed to be the red wave, and instead there was a blue one. I was like, okay, there might be a chance here. Now we had the investigations. There were new lawsuits coming in. Inflation had finally started falling by 2023. So, in 2022 to 2023, it went from 6.5% down to 3.4%. And then at the current, it's currently down at 2.2%, right? Stock market finally started picking back up, right? It's currently about the 43,000 mark, the highest it's ever been. Unemployment never went above 4.1% since then, right? So I figured, okay, Trump is done. I think people are ready to move on. I think people are ready. I think the GOP wants to get a new face of the party because they keep losing with this man. That's been 3 elections they lost, 2020, 2022, and 2018 midterm. So clearly it's time to flush him on out. Y'all bring somebody else that might be a little bit more level-headed. Bring him in. But then there were 2 factors that came and changed that, right? Factor number 1 was, for me, the primaries. The way he zipped through each primary, I was like, shoot. This man didn't even debate and was winning up everything. Nikki Haley was up there fighting for her life, and we saw how stupid she looks now. We'll come back to her too. Chris Christie and all of them. And to me, it felt like the GOP debates were an audition to be in Trump's cabinet. Vivek was working hard to make sure that Trump gives him the call at some point this week or next week, right? Tim Scott, same thing. They were working hard to get that call from, and it's crazy. Orange Man didn't even show up and won all of them. It wasn't even close. So I started thinking like, you know what? All right, it's about to be a 3rd election with this man. And then the second time was the debate, which y'all can fight me. I said it a few times on the lives. I said, please don't let these 2 debate, because at that point we were starting to see Joe seeing a little bit more delayed. And I kept saying, it's not going to look good. It's going to look like bullying. Trump is going to eat that man alive. And I hated and as soon as it started, as soon as Joe walked out, I said, okay, all right. Right. And I remember watching it, and one of my friends called and was like, are you watching this? I was like, yeah. So around this time, I started thinking, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That debate was when I started saying, this might actually be a serious thing. Because at first, when he entered the race, I was like, they're going to blow him out the water. But then I was like, no, this man might actually have a chance again. Right. So then we get to by the time Kamala gets in there, right? Where do I want to go with this? Because there's so much. I'll come to that in a second. Getting to this actual race, right? So, like I said, I said all that to say that, long story short, one, he shouldn't have even had an opportunity to run, but we gave so many inches that we gave this man a marathon and let him walk right back in the door. We watched policy shift and change. We watched different things that were once precedent no longer be precedent anymore. And it's kind of like a free for all. And it kind of opened the door to bring him back in, right? So now he's in there. He runs. He wins. As far as this race, to me, I still see this as an issue of race and gender, but race being first, gender being second, right? Because for me, there's not much you can say. And I say this because the campaigns were so different and the standards of what threshold needed to be met were not the same for either candidate, right? You saw Kamala needed to pretty much cure cancer to be even considered somewhat viable. And Orange Man was able to do whatever he wanted, where to the point where you didn't get a whole lot of policy from his side. You didn't get a lot of very clear answers, but you did get a lot of entertainment and crazy things. And they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs. And we heard that, you know, police would be given immunity and they were going to get rid of the immigrants. And there was going to be all these random things they got here. And it was interesting because people kept trying to, like, what I'm seeing now is like all the think pieces about what Kamala's team needed to do. And what, no, at the end of the day, she wasn't going to win. I think the message that was there was they wanted Trump. That's really what it was. America, specifically white America and some of the Latino community, specifically wanted Trump. That was what it was. Kamala could have cured cancer. She wasn't getting in the door, unfortunately, because that's the way that folks had moved. And there was nothing that she was going to be able to do to change the minds of voters. And we watched how much I felt like her campaign tried to accommodate every group that had beef with her, right? They were saying, okay, there's not enough outreach to black men. Next thing you know, she's doing all these different panels, and she came out with a whole proposal with what they were going to try to do for this and do that. They did that, right? They criticized and said, how come she can't do no interviews without Joe? Okay, boom, she did the media blitz. She was doing interview after interview after interview by herself. Not good enough, right? She started doing the podcast and the breakfast, everything under the sun that you can think of. And then she dropped the 83-page policy because people kept saying, we don't see no policy. All these promises, what's the policy? Here come the policy. She brings the 83 pages and there's all these different nuggets in there. $25,000 for first-time home buyers, $50,000 for small businesses, $6,000 child tax credit, expanding Medicare to ensure that people who have to take care of their parents that got dementia and everything else will get funding from the state or the government. All these different things that are being dropped off, and America still said no, right? Specifically, right? And for me, the message was they didn't want her. They specifically wanted him. And I think this goes back to race. So can we backtrack a second? Think back to when Kamala was brought on as VP, right? So remember when she was running in 2019, 2020, her campaign started out on fire, but it was because she was one of the first ones in the race. And then she quickly pulled out right before they started getting into all the primaries and the caucuses and everything else like that. And then she was brought on as Joe's vice president. In that moment, you had a lot of people who felt like, no, she wasn't qualified to be in that position. A lot of people saw her based on how she looked and said she wasn't supposed to be in there. Joe's only doing that to appease the black voters. That was the narrative that was put out there. And they kept painting the fact that at that point in time when she dropped out, she wasn't doing that well. Joe's just trying to make black folks happy because he's always catering to them. That was the narrative that's coming out. Meanwhile, black folks are like, Joe ain't doing enough, right? And then at the same time, then we get Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court. Joe had made one promise. I'm going to make sure I put somebody black in the Supreme Court. So when you have two moments like that, for a lot of people who, again, want to uphold that status quo of race, who want to uphold that idea of y'all need to stop letting all these people get in the door because those spots are for us. They saw Ketanji Brown Jackson and even Kamala being VP as we're going to make sure this never happens again, because if we keep letting folks like a Joe or somebody get in the door, more of these folks are going to come into positions of power. Because looking back at Barack Obama's cabinet, and you had all Valerie Jarrett and all these different people that were in the cabinet. No, it's too many folks that aren't supposed to be in these positions. We got to do everything in our power to make sure we don't see this anymore. Right. And I feel like people kind of held on to that because around that time we saw Ketanji Brown Jackson get into the SCOTUS. What conversations started popping up? This is around the time we start seeing the CRT and the DEI conversations, right? And the conversations on merit, right? This is around the time that Edward Bloom lawsuit circulating around affirmative action starts kicking into gear, right? Everything is, like I said, all of this is all about maintaining the status quo, maintaining things to continue to be the way that they are. And you start seeing that conversation of what happens when white America feels that they're losing something, that conversation of fear, rage, and power, utilizing it to make sure certain things never happen again. And so that's why when we even get into the logistics, when we talk about the white women vote, right? That's why I was knocking on my door. They don't want this smoke today. We talk about the white women vote. What I found interesting, and I said this on one of the lives I kept saying, especially when they first brought Kamala on after they pushed Joe out and was like, okay, Kamala's going to be the front runner. I was like, I don't know. I don't trust white women on this, right? I don't know if I trust them on this. And I say that because to me, that idea of feminism is for white women and only them. When they see another woman that is not white climb to any heights that they feel that they're supposed to be at, they don't see that as a win for women. They see that as we're losing something because they refer back to their race, right? That's why there was so much smoke for Michelle Obama. That's why I don't know why people keep saying Michelle Obama should have ran. She would have lost too. I need y'all to be for real, right? As much as people love Michelle, there's just as many people that hate her. All right. There's just as many people that called her a man. There's just as many people who called her Michael. There's just as many people who used to Photoshop images and make her face look like a monkey. So can we be for real, right? But when they see all these people, like somebody like a Kamala, for a working class white woman in South Dakota who might not be happy with her financial situation, saying a Kamala is not anything she's excited about. Unfortunately, at least half of them. We know for sure because the rate right now for the number I saw was 52%. So it was 53% in 2016. They doubled down in 2020 and went to 57. This time it dropped down a little bit to 51, 52. Yeah, you saw some folks kind of shift over, but still it wasn't enough, right? Wasn't enough. That conversation of womanhood went right out the window, right? So women's reproductive rights conversations, all that didn't matter because at the end of the day, white women chose race first. They chose the main thing. We already knew what white men were going to do, so it wasn't even a shock for white men. And what I found so interesting is the media kept trying to pivot and put all of the smoke on black men initially. There was just, and I said that these numbers weren't really going to change with the black vote. Because when you talking about the black vote as far as percentage-wise, they were about the same. If we want to talk voter turnout, the numbers were a little bit lower. But if you're talking voter turn or the percentages, 86, 87% of the black vote still went to Kamala's team and crew. You didn't really see the numbers change. But the media was ready to somehow paint black men to be the reason why Kamala wouldn't win as a way, in my opinion, to kind of take the smoke off of white women, right? For some reason, what I've always said is unfair for black voters is because, again, yes, black people are not a monolith, but we do live under the same bubble of anti-blackness and white supremacy and white nationalism, which forces us to have to work together as a collective, even when we don't want to, even when we have differing views, right? And unfortunately, what's not fair to us is we have to show up with an overabundance of support for especially with Democratic candidates in order for them to get through the door, but that burden is never placed on anybody else. And so every single time the ball is dropped and that candidate doesn't get in, the first thing they want to do is come look at what the black folks didn't do. As if they didn't just look at what the Latino community chose and what the white community chose and even what the Asian and Indian community chose, right? Which is what I found interesting. So when we're talking about the white woman vote, I kept thinking like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Because again, there's just a whole lot going on. And then we're still in the era of the great replacement theory where there's just been this narrative that white folks were being replaced by everything, right? That was the narrative being put out there. That's one of the reasons why we started getting not only the great replacement theory, but the CRT and the attacks on CRT in schools and punishing teachers and having people go and monitor the classrooms and make sure that people weren't teaching CRT and just craziness, right? And you started seeing book bans and librarians being prosecuted and certain areas where we're going to just get rid of librarians at the schools and swap them out with chaplains. And then we started seeing the rise of the DEI conversations. Oh, didn't earn it. That's still one of my favorite videos I made, by the way. And we start seeing that and everything else like that. And so, again, for a lot of people in white America, when we talk about just how ugly race is in this country, there are going to be people who will never budge for their own interests or for the interest that would benefit them if it means that somebody who looks like me is going to have the same shot. That's not supposed to happen. I'm supposed to always be beneath this demographic of people. I'm supposed to always be somebody that's inferior. I'm not supposed to have anything. And if I have anything, it's because I didn't earn it. If I have anything, it was because it was given to me through some welfare program that they're going to make sure that they can cut, right? And so when they see somebody like a Kamala, who they also feel, again, she just walked in the door because Joe picked her as the vice president, right? And then on top of that, we saw like how they kind of pushed Joe out and then Kamala became the front runner. They're going to find every box to check as to why they're not going to get behind her. So that was white America, right? And again, it's just like a lot of people see black faces or anybody who's not white in high spaces as people who took away their prosperity. That's white America in reality of how this goes, right? And so again, never mind women's reproductive rights, never mind fair wages, all that, throw that out the window, it doesn't matter. Race comes first. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I hate. I hate that I was wrong and I hate that I was right in two instances. Wrong in the aspect of, on the last live, I said at that point, because I'm starting to think like maybe this lady might actually have a shot, all right? It was starting to look like it because I'm like, Trump just kept messing up and just everything under the sun was just chaos with his campaign. JD Vance was a mess too. You know, the debates was like a slaughter, right? And then I just felt like Kamala had finally like started doing stuff right, especially in the last month. And I was like, actually, she might have a shot. So I really felt it ain't gonna be close. She actually got this. I hate that I was wrong on that, but I also hate that I was right with what I said some lives after the debate, where I said this is after Joe did that debate and it didn't go too well. And there's the conversations of, okay, well, who else? And I kept saying, as much as I enjoy Kamala, it's not her, because white America will never put her in. And I wanted to not believe that, right? I really wanted to not believe that, because I felt like with what folks were up against with regard to what is on the agenda for who's currently about to be in power, I felt that the repercussions and the backlash of just how chaotic all that is would be strong enough for people to have a little bit of common sense. And I said, I guess not. America said, nope, not at all, not on our watch. And so they said, F all that. And so I was like, damn, that just actually sucks. And it just kind of goes to show you how strong like the idea of whiteness is in this country. And the reason I'm harping so hard on white folks is because, yes, we have people in the Black collective that voted for Orange Man or voted for somebody else. Yes, there's people in other communities, but when we're talking about the overabundance of how people move, we know who carries the weight. This is the largest voter electorate, right? And with these numbers, even if you had every Black American vote for wherever, like the numbers wouldn't have even changed that much, because again, we're only 10% of the voter electorate. Right? White folks are 70%. The Latino community is about 10, 11%, right? So we just don't have the numbers, which unfortunately means that with every election, even the things that we want is still in the hands of white America. In order to have somewhat of a decent shot at getting what you want as far as Democrats, then when we're talking the numbers, you have to at least pull in about 45% of white voters, or the white voter electorate, right? You got to at least pull in about 45% of that. You got to pull in about 85, 86% of the Black vote. You have to pull in at least 60% of the Latino vote. You have to pull in at least 60% of the Asian vote. If you don't have those numbers, it's always going to be the GOP. And that's what ended up happening. Those numbers just weren't met by all the demographics, because only one demographic met that mark, right? And it's crazy to me because when you just think of everything, we've done a few videos on Project 2025. And again, I haven't even got through everything on it. But when I say that, there's some crazy ish there. Even the idea of getting rid of the FDIC, right? To the point where your money will not even be insured. I'm just thinking of how many people are about to start putting their money back in the mattress like grandma used to do, right? You have all these different things that took place. So you see what's going to happen with Social Security. Some folks were saying, well, there's a good thing because Orange Man wants to not tax Social Security. And I think that sounds great for the people who are getting it, but that's also going to drain out Social Security even faster. It's bad enough millennials, we ain't getting none of it to begin with, right? It'd be long gone by then, right? And it's just like you see what the goals are with cutting back Medicare, Medicaid, Affordable Care Act on the chopping block. We see they want to get rid of the Department of Education. That's the end of Pell Grants. That's the end of FAFSA. That's the end of even people who have special needs children. That's the end of so many different things. And none of that mattered, right? None of that mattered. And it just makes me question, because I'm like, for the people who rallied behind this, my question is, what did you actually gain? Because you said no, again, you said no to money for first-time home buyers. You said no to money for small businesses. You said no to unions, pretty much, because they about to go and bust up all the unions that have been shaking the table as of late, right? You said no to the child tax credit. You said no to the expansion of Medicare and Medicaid to take care of your loved ones. You said no to student loan forgiveness. You said no to all these different things. Other than the conversation that some people have about immigration, what did you gain? Because I'm trying to figure out what are the wins here. If your sole policy was specifically because you wanted to see a demographic of people get yanked out and shipped across the border, to me, that wasn't enough to stand, like, make it make sense, right? As far as the Latino community in their vote, good luck. Now, I understand, and I've said this before, the Latino community is not a monolith. The only thing that they got in common is that a lot of them speak Spanish. But politically, they all move so differently. Puerto Ricans move one way, Cubans move one way, Mexicans move one way, all these different groups move whatever way. But at the end of the day, a lot of them chose whiteness, right? Which is so interesting to me, which I was like, you know what, I'll mind my Black business and let them talk amongst themselves about what it is that they want. Good luck, because that's all I got for you. But it's like when you're looking at all the things that are on the table, like police immunity, right? That for me was the closing the door on any conversation of Orange Man even having a shot for me. Like, absolutely not. After what we just saw for the last decade, and you want to give the police more immunity for what they do, I understand giving them that immunity is going to empower them to do any and everything they want. Like, we just saw the nonsense surrounding the Breonna Taylor case. And yeah, we saw one finally be convicted for, violating her civil rights, but we saw two others get off, right? And I also kept thinking Supreme Court. I kept thinking federal judges and circuit courts and the appellate courts, all these judges that are about to be locked in. And for me, whatever rage you had within the last 2-3 years should have not been something that would now put into jeopardy the next 20 or 30. That is the part that gets me, right? And I'm just like, well, what did you actually gain? But I'll say this, for all the people who keep trying to come after black folks, leave us out of it. Black folks did whatever it was they were supposed to do. And even for the black folks who chose to vote how they voted, they didn't even have a large enough number to really shake the table like that anyway. So the smoke ain't with us. Take it up with these other groups. Y'all gonna stop coming after black folks every time white folks continue to do things and y'all want us to pull us out, right? Save the marches. I know there's apparently a women's march. Save it. Y'all know who y'all are. Them bracelets, y'all can save. Y'all tried this again back in 2016 with them safety pins. Oh, we put on a safety pin and that means you're safe with me. First of all, black folks aren't scared of none of y'all. Like, we're not scared of y'all. We're just tired of y'all coming in here messing up stuff and getting in the way. My kind of politics is leave folks alone. That's my politics. Leave people alone. Whatever people already have at the moment, stop taking it away. And that was the beef that I had with this current campaign, because I just didn't see anything that Orange Man was actually offering. Everything was what was about to be stripped and taken away, right? And then what makes it worse is you have some of the dumbest, when I say dumbest people that are going to be in this cabinet, at least with, Orange Man's first term, he wasn't surrounded by only yes men and yes women. There were people that were still trying to maintain some element of stability. So he was in office for his term. Things could have been a lot worse, but they weren't. There were some things that I didn't like. Actually, a lot of things I didn't like. We was on here going off all the time. There were some things that weren't too bad. Like, okay, I can almost see that. But now we're in a space where all of those people that were the yes men that jumped ship and then spent the last year telling us, do not put this man back in office. Literally every cabinet member, 40 plus people. Please don't do it, y'all. Don't do it. Other than Nikki Haley, who looks foolish as hell, right? Nikki, when you talk about threw your entire political career in the trash, you ran against the man, right? You told us how he was unfit and how he was this and how he was that. We could never do it. And America has to, they have a choice, right? And she dropped out. Not only dropped out, then endorsed him, then campaigned for him. I was like, what the hell? And you did all that. And what did Trump say? He said, well, I'm going to have a great cabinet, but she won't be in it. You played yourself. And that's probably the end of your political career anyway, because those who were like Nikki Haley supporters who didn't want to support Trump, I know they felt some kind of way when they saw, what is she doing? Right? Crazy. But yeah, I'm going to pause and read some comments and then we will chit chat and talk about some other stuff. All I'll say is it'll be an interesting time. We'll see how this goes. I'm not sure if the House has been confirmed yet. If the House flips, that might be somewhat of a buffer for some of these programs that are about to be cut, because that's my biggest concern is a lot of the social programs. That's what was also getting me. A lot of people who benefit or depend on subsidized housing, who depend on all these different things, were some of the main ones trying to shake the table. And I'm like, I hope you got the money in your account to make sure that you're going to be all right, because we're in for it. It's going to be a time, right? I should have set it up to do a call-in because I kind of want to hear some people's opinions, but maybe we'll try that on the next one. All right. I can't get to every comment because we'll be here all day, and I was talking for a full hour before I even looked at the chat. So we're going to try to do what we can. Let's see what we can get here. I can't get everybody, right? Somebody said, it turns out the Asians are a hard 50-50 on the blame game chart. It wasn't enough. That's a lot of Republican deprogramming. It should show you something where if every demographic in America votes one way, but the other, and I'm talking specifically black folks, vote at such a high abundance against something, that should kind of tell you that maybe there's a bigger conversation. But I think, again, when it comes to the conversation of race in this country, in my opinion, Black Americans are the only demographic that really understand how this thing works. Other groups get the luxury and the privilege to pick and choose when they want to acknowledge it because they tend to not be on the receiving end of it. So even when you're talking to the Latino community, you have so many who, like, they check the white box, right? Yeah, they speak some Spanish, but a lot of them pass as white. And even if they don't pass as white, those who have indigenous bloodlines, and even some who are as black as I am, still be checking the white box, right? So yeah, they speak some Spanish, but they see themselves as an extension of what white America does. And like I said, you have a lot of people who come to the country to be white because they feel the idea of prosperity is what, when they see the American dream, when they see American prosperity, who is the face of it? It's always white Americans. They're not going to show us. If they show us, they're showing us at the crack house. They're using clips from 1988 during the Reagan years, right? With us standing by the wire fence as the police are doing the raid. That's the image they give of us, right? So nobody's coming here to align with what we have going, which is why you kind of see so many groups come and disassociate and run from us, right? When in reality, we're the only demographic that has seen this thing through and through and can tell you exactly how people are going to move each and every time, right? Oh, well. Mike again said, by the way, Biden was pro-union too, and they did nothing, retelling that that's a good thing for the people. And what was crazy with that, I'm thinking of the Teamsters, how Biden bailed them out. Millions of dollars they received. And what did they do? We ain't endorsing him. And again, because it goes back to, again, Biden. And listen, here's the thing. When Biden is not racist enough for white people, that should tell you how bad racism is in this country. Biden was not our choice, right? Coming out of 2020, Biden was not the choice. He just ended up becoming the choice, and we rolled with him. But generationally, when you're talking younger voters, Biden was not the one, the front runner. I remember when he announced, I said, God dang, what are you doing, right? When it got down to the wire and it became him and Orange Man, I was like, okay, well, Biden, look, I ain't crazy, Biden. Let's go ahead and do this, right? But yeah, when you look at all the critiques that Biden received, because my critique of Biden always was he went wherever the wind blew because he loved the idea of being in charge. He loved the idea of power, which I think he's learned that the hard way a few times. But you watch his political points and viewpoints and stances change wherever the wind blew. So if you're talking about the racist years, right, against busing, he was against busing because the largest voter electorate was against busing. He was trying to get in the door. Right. And then you watch the pendulum swing the other way. And then when you talk about the crime bill, he was right there with the crime bill piece. But it's also because you had the CBC saying we need to do something. Congressional Black Caucus said we need to do something about this crime. Democrats, y'all are too soft on it. Democrats have been out of power for 12 years. They finally got in the door. Do something right. So everybody, when we're talking about partisan, everybody was on board. Here comes the crime bill. Here comes the mandatory minimums. Here comes all these different things. Right, Joe was in on it. We fast forward some years. Here comes the smoke about the crime bill. Now they're apologizing for it. Now they're trying to remedy and make it right. Right. To me, Joe was always going to move wherever the wind was blowing in order to stay in power. And I think one of the things that I kept saying when he ran in 2020, he said he would consider only doing one term. Right. Which is what I wish he did. And I kept saying that for the last year. I wish he would have just done the one term and opened the door for the next candidate to come in. Right. And even though he technically did, he did it with 2.5 months to go. 2.5 months. Right now, I've been reading all the drama with the Democrats because they over there fighting in the house and ripping out hair and cussing each other out. But anyway, you know, they died. One of the narratives was they wanted Joe to step down, and then they were going to do, you know, at the convention they would vote it in. But that would have been chaotic too. I don't know why people keep thinking Gavin Newsom was going to win. He would have lost as well with the marketing and how they would have pushed the ads. All they had to do to scare white America into not putting Gavin Newsom in there was show the homelessness in California. Right, that would have been the main thing. They would have just talked about how Gavin Newsom was too far to the left and too radical. So, like I said, 2024, that was the year America wanted Trump. Unfortunately, that's who they want to put in there. It wasn't going to matter who the candidate was, right? People were saying Kamala could have ran a better campaign. I think if I'm comparing campaigns, I think she ran a way better one than Joe in 2020, and she definitely ran a way better one than Hillary in 2016. But that's that. Let's see. Somebody said, I'm also trying to understand why Democrat senators won in Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, I think Nevada also, but Trump won all those states. I'm not going to jump on the conversation that's floating around right now. I'm going to wait and kind of see till I hear some more official stuff because I'm not about to be on here looking crazy. But what I'm thinking might answer that. But very interesting. But I will say, if it got to that point where everybody voted down ballot and chose not to vote for her, that just doubles down my point about race and gender in this conversation, where, again, they didn't even want her, right? So we'll see where that goes. RFK vowed to get rid of all the neurotoxin prevalent in Black communities. I see that as a big win. He's also about to get rid of the FDA. That's not going to be a big win. And he's a conspiracy theorist. He's on some nonsense. I don't see that as a win. And they were already doing that when you're talking about if we would have passed the Green New Deal. Let's see. Pretty RJ444. Calvin, the bigger conversation is definitely Merrick Garland, like we were talking about. He did not do his job. We wouldn't be here. And had the Department of Justice done their job when Joe first got in office. Like I said, they took their sweet time, right? Merrick Garland, when you want to talk about sorry, I was like, my God, just sorry. You know, that's my parents used to say when we didn't do stuff right. Just sorry. Just sorry. Didn't I tell you to take out the trash? Just sorry. Right? Like, man. Fact check said no black and brown coalition, just black. And that's what pretty much every black content creator has been saying on these platforms for like the last 5-6 years. There is no black and brown anything. I believe black people have an empathetic notion to other groups of people. We don't like to see other groups suffer, and we try to always extend the olive branch, and we always get burned. And I think a lot of us are just like, you know what? Y'all go ahead. Leave us out of it. Y'all got it. It's your world. We just living in it, because every single time, right? Every single time. Even think about, there's a lot of black folks who were going hard, even when we're talking about Palestine and Gaza. Like this, people, I think people in the black collective understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of some nonsense. And so when they see it happening to other people, it's triggering and you want to see it stop. But the problem is, even when you try to help certain groups of people, they still be on some BS, right? You be like, what the heck? Let's see. The gains for voting for Trump was the idea that they don't have to have transgenderism forced on them based on what they believe, and they get to have abortions banned, but white people get more of them. With the transgender conversation, that's 1% of the population, and even with that, I feel like there's a lot of misinformation. Like the narrative of children going to school and coming back a different sex has never been a thing, right? They just keep painting that. Like they definitely do the fear mongering. That's always been a thing where everybody's the boogeyman except for this demographic, right? Specifically straight white men. Everybody else is the boogeyman at some point. And so it's interesting. I just feel like if you're running your campaign on what you plan on taking away from other groups of people, what is it? To me, I'm lost. That's just punitive policy. That's nothing to be excited about, right? And I think we spend too much time in everybody else's business as well. Let's see. Sonia Massey was Orange County. Kamala wasn't even in charge of anything with Sonia Massey. That was Orange County. Kamala was never whatchamacallit in Orange County, California. But I've heard about the Sonia Massey case. Tyler Hackman said, yes, Trump is about to have another yes men. He's going to have people who, and then we got Elon in here. Now, listen, I give it 5 to 7 months before Elon and Orange Man fall out. And it's going to be an S-word show. Mark my words. They're not gonna last that long. Give it a minute, right? Man, let's see. I'm scared for the kids in school. That's what has me concerned. I'm thinking of all the kids who have like IEPs and everything. Now I will say, I think what will happen, I feel like the first 2 years, depending on how things go, I don't think we're going to feel a lot of it in the economy, because he's going to inherit Biden's economy. Like in the same way people kept saying, oh, well, when Trump was in office, times were good, my money was good. I was like, yeah, because he inherited Obama's economy. He inherited one of the strongest economies ever and then crashed it. And then y'all are pissed off because Biden inherited Trump's and was able to kind of flip it and bring it back. It wasn't perfect. There was still some discrepancies in the middle class and working class. I still think felt the brunt of a lot of the problems, but that also ties to the tax code changes that took place in 2018 through Paul Ryan that nobody wanted to give smoke for. They want to somehow say it was Joe's fault, right? But it's interesting, and it goes back to what we were saying as far as, unfortunately, we have a lot of people who just aren't researched in politics. There's a lot of people who don't follow all of this. There's some people who just started paying attention this year, right? And it's not to knock anybody, but understand politics, this is so layered. There's so much to consider and look at. And that's why I've always said with my politics, I always look at the bigger picture. I'm thinking of how does this affect us 20, 30 years from now? I'm always thinking of our of Black senior citizens. How does this affect grandma and grandpa in the big house, right? I'm really concerned for that demographic when it comes to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. I'm very concerned, right? Even with what they're kind of talking about with shifting the tax code and kind of just getting rid of federal taxes and only specifically having a sales tax, and then the stuff with the tariffs, and I'm a little concerned. The last time we did these tariffs, we saw what happened to American farmers. The farming industry almost crashed and they had to get a bailout, but Black farmers were left out of the bailout under the Orange Man administration, right? And so it's like, there's just all these things to kind of think about. But no, I'm really concerned for the kids in school. And I'm thinking about what happens with college. If we, in the event that FAFSA is gone, in the event that Pell Grants are gone, in the event that, you know, the regulations to ensure that things are fair are gone, what will eventually happen is if you're not wealthy, you're out of luck. So I hope, I mean, for those who have money, I understand why they move the way they move. But when I say money, I mean, you're bringing in $400K or more every year. I'm not talking about people who might make $100,000. $100,000 is great, but $100,000, you're not rich. You're not. Sorry. Those are like some of the things I'm really concerned about. I'm concerned even with healthcare. They already talking about they want to get rid of Obamacare, and he doesn't even have a plan. He has a concept of a plan, right? Hey, but at least y'all will be kicking immigrants out, and that'd be a game somehow. Like, wild to me. Let's see. Somebody said Nikki is beyond goofy and self-hating. Nikki better, whoo, Nikki and Vivek, them two, a mess. Somebody said the federal can't change for the states. I hear that part, but I think the issue is when we have states that depend on federal money. Like, that's the other thing. Like, even when we're talking about what states bring in, there are some states that don't have the same kind of revenue flow like a place like California. Like, California by itself is the 8th largest economy in the world, right? Just as a state, compared to some states that don't have money. And so what ends up happening, they have these little narratives where they try to paint some of these states to be so radical and this, that, and third. But these are the states keeping the country afloat. The Washingtons, the Californias, the New Yorks, Illinois, Maryland, these states that have these booming industries that are helping support our federal budget and everything else like that, right? There's just a whole bunch of things that I think we have to look at. Now, I feel like, there's going to be some things that they're going to go in there and change, and maybe there might be some good that comes. Every administration has one or two things that they do right? Every administration, even the worst of them, had something they did right. Even Nixon did something right here and there every blue moon, right? Affirmative action, right? So every administration has something that they do right, but it's the concern is, but what are y'all about to do wrong? What are y'all about to really mess up, right? And that's my issue. I just felt like Orange Man didn't want to be president to begin with. This was just his way of staying out of jail. And this is also kind of his vengeance tour. So everybody who's going against him, good luck. Because, he's about to, it's payback like a mother up in here for him, right? Melania looked like she don't want to be first lady again. Well, I know Melania is pissed. She got to dump her boyfriend and go back to her husband again. Like, I know, it's a mess. Make it make sense. I'm sorry, Sonia Massey, you're right. That's Illinois. I'm thinking the case in California that people kept bringing up out of Orange County with the lady that was threatened with jail time with the kids' truancy. I'm sorry, Sonia Massey is a different case. Thank you for clearing that up, Bryson Stanley. Let's see. Sorry, after you be reading all this, you got a million names in your head. Some of these things start floating and mixing up. Apologies. I don't like being wrong. Let's see. Somebody said, I think Elon is being investigated. Even if Elon is being investigated, they got 2 months to get it done and act on it. Because understand, as soon as the new administration comes in, all these people are out the door. That's why Jack Smith is already kind of closing the federal investigations in the Orange Man. He ran out of time, right? Somebody said, do you all not remember how much money was given out during the pandemic? What did you expect with the economy? And I think people forgot, as far as the economy, the entire world economy took a hit, a huge hit. These people are on my phone today, like a massive hit. And honestly, the U.S. was doing better than every other country, technically, as far as economies. Like when you look at the numbers, when you look at GDP, gross domestic product and everything, the U.S. was bouncing the heck back, right? But we'll see what happens here. I think in this moment, people, one, make sure you hold on to your job. And I think people have to start kind of like strategizing for what's next. If you throw in the towel right now because you're in your feelings and say, I don't care no more, well, it's not going to stop the people who are doing whatever they want to do from doing what they want to do. So this wouldn't be the time to tap out. I do think people should take a minute to just gather their thoughts, because it's a lot. Every election is draining. Like, I hate politics. Oddly enough, I hate politics, even though we talk about it all the time. It's draining to follow. You got to do this crap every year. Every year, there's some kind of election, Senate race, gubernatorial race, in-state. So you're sick of it, right? You hate it all. But here we are. Somebody said, I'm knocking the uneducated. At this point, you need to do your research and educate yourself. No excuse. But I feel like that's a part of a greater thing that's been happening, because we've been talking about how there has been an attack on education, at least for like the last 10 years. And we know that the end goal is to privatize education because there's money to be made. If you have all these millions of children that need an education, if you can get a dime from it instead of it coming out of taxpayer dollars and you privatize it, and boom, there's lots of money to be made. And I think that's one of the main reasons why they're doing so many things to kind of strip down and chop down public education. And at the same time, when you can keep a demographic, all you need to do is keep 1 or 2 generations of people a little bit slower than the others, and you can watch an entire pendulum swing with how a country moves, right? If you can keep enough people uneducated on certain things, right? And when I say education, I'm not specifically just talking people who go to college, because not everybody's going to go to college. College ain't for everybody. And just because you got a degree doesn't mean you're the smartest one in the room, right? But education as far as like people taking the initiative to understand things around them. One of the things I've been saying for like the last year on this live is I think in the United States, because as a country, we've experienced hardship, but we haven't experienced hardship like countries that don't have money, right? Within this lifetime of ours, we haven't experienced in America where there's a 60% unemployment rate, right? We haven't experienced in America with famine. Yes, 1 in 5 children are underfed in this country, but we're not living in famine where nothing is growing, right? We have the technology when even during horrible seasons, we got irrigation and all these different things that can kind of keep the food supply going. Like we've never experienced that. Fortunately, based on where our country is located, we've never had to really deal with the idea of being invaded and attacked from above from different countries. I think as time progresses, it's becoming more and more of a threat because other countries now have better technology than they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. But in this current moment, that's never been a thing. People don't go to bed every day afraid of the great white flash like some folks might have done in the 50s and 60s during the Cold War, right? These are things that we don't have to worry about. I think our first wake-up call would have been COVID, right? COVID came. At first, folks thought, oh, it's going to stay over there. It's just going to stay over there in China. We'll be good, right? Nobody was really taking it seriously. And them numbers started doubling. Like I remember we were looking at what was happening in Italy, right? And Italy was having 80,000 cases a day. At that point in time, we had about 3,000 or 4,000. And I remember seeing a tweet where it was like, y'all realize this is going to be the U.S. next week. And I was like, oh, this is just weird. This is real, right? Here come that next week. The numbers started going up, right? And up and up. And it started getting to the point where eventually people you knew started having it. And some of us got it, right? And you started knowing people who passed from it, right? If you listen, actually, no, I'm not going to tell you that. It's going to be in the podcast, but there's somebody who's affected by it in the podcast, the Comedically Hard-Headed podcast. It'll get to it when it's time. And so I think that was the first wake-up call for some people. And not only that, but then watching the economy start to collapse, right? People getting laid off. As soon as the country shut down, my company was like, furloughs, all of y'all. I'm like, wait. I was like, Frank, y'all said it all. You couldn't even wait. Like, man, right? Furloughs, boom, here you go. I'm like, damn, right? Now I got to live off beans and noodles, right? But I think that might have been like that first moment in our lifetime where, okay, we're starting to feel the brunt of what happens around the world all the time, right? As Americans, you haven't really felt the brunt of your country being taken over by like a new regime. Yeah, we have different political parties that come into power, but as far as like somebody coming from another country and taking over and killing all our government officials and now they're in charge, and that hasn't been a thing for us. And I think because Americans kind of live in this bubble of sometimes delusion, Americans think they're exempt from everything, which is why every time something happens, folks are like, oh, it is what it is. You know, we'll just bounce back next time. We always move as if we always have another 4 years, right? I think a lot of people looked at this election as if they still have another 4 years and everything will be exactly as it is. God willing, we'll have another election in 4 years, but who's to say what the country is going to look like in 4 years, right? And those are the things that kind of start thinking about. What is the country going to look like in 20? What are the decisions that are happening now? How is that going to look for us 20, 30, 40 years from now? In the same way that we're still living in the remnants of the Reagan era, right? Because when we're talking about the current economy, this is just like Reagan 2.9, right? When Reagan decided to shift that tax code where the rich would pay a whole lot less, their taxes went from 70% to 29%, right? And then they raised the working and middle class, and then he cut a bunch of programs, right? Could start just cutting, and boom, we're cutting the food program, we're cutting this, we're cutting that, and then he kind of brought in, let's kind of find more ways to criminalize people and increase the prison industrial complex and all that stuff like that. We're still living in that now, the remnants of it, right? The tax code has never even shifted remotely close to what it was before the Reagan era, right? Which is why our infrastructure suffered. Now, fortunately, we were able to pass the infrastructure bill under the Biden administration, but we were only able to pass one segment of it. We didn't get to pass the second half, right? But it still created a bunch of jobs. It's still helping fix our bridges and fix our pipes. Now, what I am concerned about is because we have a spiteful person that's about to come into office, I'm wondering how many things he's going to undo just because he doesn't want the other person to have credit. One of the main things that I feel like the Obama administration got smoked for was the Flint water crisis, right? So here comes the next administration working to try to fix it. And that's one of the things that the Biden administration have been doing. One of the things they just signed into policy less than a month ago was giving, especially major metropolitan cities, they have 10 years to correct their pipes. This has already been going on since 2021, but they have 10 years to correct it. With the conversation of regulation, with the conversation of profits, these might be some policies that might get gutted and be like, nope, or whatever. Leave it to the states, leave it to the cities, right? These are things to kind of start thinking about. Yeah, so we it's gonna be a time, y'all, and I'll be here to talk about it, right? So yeah, that's wild to me. All right, let me go back to read a few more chats here. Somebody said Texas got more money than any other state. It's ridiculous, and then people there are struggling bad, especially with healthcare. And we've already had that conversation even with healthcare. The fact that the only reason we don't have universal healthcare is because of the conversation of race, because it meant that Black people were going to get free healthcare, because it meant that folks who were not white were going to get free healthcare, and it got shut down. In the same way that when schools were integrated, what's the first thing that happened with public colleges? They started charging, right? It used to be free. If they weren't free, they were extremely, extremely affordable to the point where people could work at Wendy's and pay their way through school. That is not a conversation anymore. When I tell you race plays a role in everything, and that's why I will never stop talking about it, because there are some who believe that if you just move on from it, we can move forward. No, we just watched on Tuesday how race works, right? In our face. When you look at California, you saw what was the proposition that would have outlawed pretty much slavery through the 13th Amendment. What did they say? Make them keep working. We ain't get behind that, right? That's over in liberal California, right? Man. Calvin, have you talked about Marjorie Taylor? Here's a tip for people, because I keep catching the comments that are in all caps, and I keep seeing the same persons. Start writing in caps if you really want me to see what you're saying, because I'll be missing half the comments. He's going to put Marjorie Taylor Greene in the cabinet. That sounds about right. That's right up her alley. Good luck. I just hate that we got to be collateral to the decisions of stupid people. I wouldn't have so much smoke for Orange Man if he actually had really like smart people on his team, but he gets the lowest of low to run with him. Look at Giuliani. Giuliani got a GoFundMe out right now for food. Like, what? Make it make sense. And I hope Elon sells Twitter so we can have it back. He didn't mess that. That was my favorite app. Oh, Elon's so irritating. What do y'all have to say to the 1 in 4 Black men that voted for Trump? Same thing I said last time when it was 1 in 4 Black men that voted for Trump. Make it make sense to me. I don't understand. I think some of it is a bit of male chauvinism. I think some of it is more so an individual approach versus collective community thinking. And then some of it is also the conversation of delineation when you're talking about what constitutes as Black. Because when you even talking to the diaspora, you see the numbers and stuff shift and vary depending on where people are coming from. So like a prime example would be, again, if you're talking about the Virginia gubernatorial election, when Youngkin got in, the Ethiopian community voted for Youngkin. And it was mainly because the Ethiopian community was not happy with the way that the U.S. responded to what was happening in Tigray, right? But Ethiopians, when you're talking about what box do they check the Black box. So when we're talking about the Black vote, that is also inclusive of people who are within the diaspora. So the numbers, look, all I know is it wasn't me. But I do think, again, and I said this, I think on one of the lives where we were talking about, it might have been right when they announced that Kamala was going to be the nominee. And I was saying, unfortunately, I hope men do not allow like the male chauvinism to get in the way of reality, right? But everybody's going to do what it is that they do, unfortunately, right? And that's how America works. Everybody gets to vote for who they want to vote for. But again, when I talk about like Black people collectively, at the end of the day, if we're looking at the numbers and generationally, the generation that tended to vote for Orange Man, oddly enough, was Generation X, right? So baby boomers voted for Kamala. And even when we're talking nationally, it was like 51-49 in favor of Kamala with baby boomers, because I think they're thinking of Social Security, they're thinking of Medicare, Medicaid, they're thinking of retirement, they're thinking of their 401ks. Millennials voted in favor of Kamala. Gen Z voted in favor of Kamala, but I thought they would have had a higher number in favor of Kamala. Gen X was the one that voted for Orange, man. I said, oh, okay, need to see what's going on with there. So that can be a study. Okay, what's happening with Generation X. But yeah, we'll see. Oh, Crystal Hawkins, I forgot about that. They said, oh, he's going after disabled people for sure. There's just so many things to think about, like Title IX. There's so much, right? Accessibility. People always keep talking about this whole DEI, but they forget that, especially even on the federal side, it's DEIA, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, including those who have different experiences from those of us who don't share the same experience, right? This is why you started to see on a lot of things, like maybe there's a picture and you'll see alternative text, right? Because not everybody can make out what the image is, but they can read what that image is supposed to be. Things like that, right? Which don't seem like a big deal to people who aren't affected by it, but for those who are, that's everything to them, right? That ensures that they can have as enjoyable of an experience with certain things as everybody else, right? So those are things to kind of think about. Somebody said Kamala was too ditzy or she was playing it. I don't see that as ditzy. I just think she had personality. And for me, on one end of the spectrum, you got somebody talking about folks eating dogs and cats, and somebody who just makes up anything and says whatever's on his mind. And there's another person who has personality, isn't a stoic. Yeah, she likes to laugh, but you know what? She laughed her way right into passing the bar exam and becoming a lawyer. And she technically would have been the only candidate ever to run for president that served in all three branches of government. So I feel like, I think people just, there are folks who just didn't like her. We got to also understand, before she was announced as the presidential nominee, unfortunately, she was one of the most disliked vice presidents in history, right? I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but I don't know why. And yeah, there's that. Oscar Grant, what, 2013? Let's see. Somebody said it's exhausting. It is very exhausting. That's why I be taking breaks. I know y'all probably cussing me out because y'all are like, where's he at? I knew on Wednesday y'all probably camped out. I was like, I was at home drinking tea. I turned off the news for like 3 days. I went to visit my godmom. We was up there hanging up pictures on the wall, and me and her always like play a bunch of throwback music and just be laughing. And she and I were randomly having this debate because this is none of y'all are gonna care, but I'm gonna tell the story anyway because I enjoy happy things. I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. But anyway, one of her favorite singers is Will Downing, right? And Will Downing is cool. I'm not crazy over Will Downing, but Will Downing and Phil Perry, who is one of my favorite male vocalists, they have a cover of Baby I'm For Real, which is one of my favorite After Seven songs. And she was trying to tell me that the Will Downing version with Phil Perry was better. And so we had a whole sing-off playing both versions and seeing whose was better. Of course, my argument won because all I had to do was play the live version, all right, with After Seven, and it was done. So that's how I was spending my time. I was like, I'm not even about to jump on this right now, because if I would have come on here on Wednesday, I probably would have been demonetized by the time I was finished with everything I was thinking. All right. Rhea P said he actually held up aid because he wanted to put his signature on the checks, like it was coming from it. Just the stupidity of it all. And that's my thing. Now, somebody was telling me that maybe he might not be terrible because he's going to want to go down as being a president that has a great track run because so many people whacked the first term. I don't know about that. And I'm also not delusional because I feel like once people show you who they are, this is what we have seen. Right. And now that he doesn't have to worry about running for a second term and he has nothing to lose, it's the him show. It's him and himself and whatever he want to do. The Chips and Science Act is bringing manufacturing jobs back to the USA, and I feel like that's in danger too. Unfortunately. Hey, Calvin, did you hear about the Hispanic Trump supporter and his neighbor? Good luck to them. Like I said, you know what? I'm kind of in that black coalition where it's like, you know what? Now, I didn't try to tell y'all a million times, so I'm going to just take care of me and mines. Good luck. You know, I add you to the prayer list, but I am not coming out here and fighting for every other group, because every time we be fighting for all of y'all be spitting in our face. So good luck. There's enough of y'all to band together and fight for change. But you should not, like, if a campaign is telling you who they don't want here, don't think just because you can play the role, you're exempt. And unfortunately, that's what we keep seeing. That's what Vivek learned the hard way when he did that interview with Ann Coulter, and she said, I really like your policy, I like everything, but I wasn't going to vote for you because you're an Indian. And not even just you're Indian, but you're an Indian. She put him in the other box real quick. That's how they move. So even like black folks who be breaking their necks to kind of be in some of these white spaces, you collateral too. Don't think just because you can jump as high. They look at Tim Scott. Right when it got close to a conversation where Tim Scott might have had a shot at possibly being vice president, what was the first thing they started doing? How come he ain't got a wife? We got questions. Next thing you know, he done got married, right? So it's okay. All right. Oh, Elon. Elon, if there's anybody I could punch in the throat, it's Elon. That is the most annoying person. Elon is somebody who don't know how to leave people alone. Like, be rich and go be rich and leave us alone. How come you got to insert yourself in everything? How do we go from you? One, Tesla's not even like, the other thing too, I hope and pray that society gets out of this space where they worship wealth and worship wealthy people and assume that wealthy people are the epitome of intelligence and the epitome of integrity and the epitome of how everybody should operate. Because all you need to do is pull Elon's card and look at how jacked up he is, right? First of all, Tesla, he never made the cars. He just came and took over the company and took the credit, right? Same thing with the SpaceX, right? And now you've seen what he's done on Twitter. It's like, can't you just be rich and leave us alone? Why did you have to insert yourself in everything? Why are you, who you're not even from here, so invested with what we're doing over here, right? And they used to have this man on TED Talks and panel discussions, and he was never saying anything that made any sense. And folks were just sizing him up and gassing him up, and the rappers got him in all the lyrics. I can't even listen to Lil Uzi Vert's Neon Guts no more just because of that Elon Musk line. I'd be skipping that song, so skipping that damn song, right? Anyway. Somebody said nobody ever thinks long term. No, because everybody wants to be in the moment. Everything is about me, and what can I get now? And I think that's why you've seen, like I said, politics just become what it is. There's a lot of folks who don't believe in the idea of the long haul. There's folks who believe in give it to us right now or we out. And unfortunately, the problem with the we out is, yeah, we out, but that leaves all of these things on the table to be chopped up that we still need, that still benefit us collectively. But guess what? We need a we out. So folks be like, I'm out. And then all the stuff be getting chopped. And the people who are affected by it are like, are y'all ever coming back? Nope. Not till they do what we need to do. And at this point, the folks that they're trying to teach the lesson to have already found another pocket and collective to utilize, so they don't even need that group anymore, right? Because I'm going to tell you what Democrats are getting ready to do, right? They're not concerned about the black vote. They're concerned about that Latino vote because it's gotten smaller and smaller and smaller each election. That's the group they're going to be, well, that if they still here in 2 years, that's the group they're about to try to figure out how to win over, right? Watch it. We'll watch. We'll see. Right. Because the craziest thing I saw with one of the critiques was I saw something where it said white people felt left out in this election. And I said, left out from what? Right. What were you left out at? Because Kamala had a 3-page paper about what she was going to do for black men, right? Or what the Latino community was going to get, and y'all felt left out. Y'all got everything else, but okay. We got 3 pages, but okay, right? Oh, Bill Maher's, after he started using N-word, he was done with me. He's on some nonsense. And he's somebody who will not be affected. Like, at this point, super wealthy people are not affected by any of this. So I don't really pay attention to anything that they say. That's why I always say, like, I don't really listen to celebrities with their politics and stuff because they're not affected. They'll be just fine. Don't matter who's in office. They actually might do better under Orange Man, right? Especially if he changed that tax code again. They'll have a great time. Stock market will probably do very, very well, to be honest, right? Defense contracting will probably do very, very well. Some tech companies I think will do very, very well. But it's things that are accessible to the wealthy that we don't necessarily have access to, where we're not. There's going to be doors closed to us, right? So yeah, there's going to be a whole bunch of things we're going to see here. And we're living with the gig economy Obama ushered in. Yeah, because a lot. That's the other thing when they always talk about like jobs and jobs. A lot of these jobs are Uber Eats, DoorDash, right? They're jobs, but yeah. Oh, I forgot about PragerU, Brian Stanley. PragerU is already kind of instilled in some of the school districts, specifically in places like Florida and Texas, but that's also in Project 2025, where they're going to try to make that a national thing within the schools. Remember, PragerU is pretty much this way to, I'd like to say, indoctrinate children into not questioning the greatness of the United States. And if you've seen some of the videos, go look on YouTube, specifically look at like YouTube Kids, right? You can see the story of Christopher Columbus and how what he did to those on the island of Hispaniola wasn't that bad. Yeah, he killed everybody, but they needed to in order for things to work out. And there's elements in there where they say slavery wasn't that bad. If there wasn't slavery, we wouldn't have the great country we had. And this helped the people from the continent of Africa have better lives. Like PragerU is some nonsense, and they're starting to spread that everywhere, right? Somebody corrected that 1 in 5 black men, not 1 in 4. Yeah, because the number I saw was 79% for Kamala, and then I think I saw 18 or 19% for Trump, and then the rest were like independent. So yeah, that was more so 1 in 5. All right. Yeah, I ain't watched Bill Maher in years. Somebody said Gaza and the West Bank is a wrap. Good luck. Like I said, I really didn't agree with Joe and Kamala with how they were moving, but I even agree less with what Orange Man wants to do over there. Like, good luck. I would like for our tax dollars to stop going and killing people around the world. That's one of the things I really wish we could stop doing. But sadly, like I said, the way that our economy runs, those defense contracting companies, Booz Allen Hamilton, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, just they bring so much money to the economy that when we're in a constant state of war, military combat, or even under the threat of anything, we have to constantly keep making weapons. It keeps the economy running. That's how tied in the United States is when it comes to like war. That's one of the things I absolutely hate and loathe about where our tax dollars go. And even when people are like, oh, I don't support it, even when you don't support it, you go and get whatever you get from Burger King, get that Whopper and get that soda. When they put that little tax on it, there's a segment of that tax going to go blow somebody up, right? It's wild to me. Calvin, do you think he's going to hurt Black Americans with the army and police, anarchy in the South? With Trump, I don't think Trump is specifically going to sit here and come straight for us, but I think when things happen to us, he's going to stand back and not do anything, right? Because we see how he moved in 2020, right? We saw even during the George Zimmerman verdict, the tweet that he put out, well, the jury had no other choice. What are you talking about? Like, I just think he cares about the things he cares about, and everybody else he doesn't care about, good luck. And I think Black folks are in the good luck crowd. Yeah, there's some Black celebrities he likes, and for me, he hasn't really done a lot for us collectively, but he loves to run around and say no one has done more for Black people than him. And they always like to latch onto the conversation of opportunity zones. And we've already talked about how opportunity zones actually sped up the process of gentrification. And most of the people who actually benefited from opportunity zones were white folks and developers, not Black folks, right? So, yeah, it's going to be a mess. I just hate we got to be collateral to stupidity. Because I feel like Republicans could have won with a different candidate. If Republicans would have chosen to have, and I guess they won, so I don't even know I'm having a speech, but, if they would have just had a sensible candidate that was level-headed, right? The country tends to just vote Republican anyway, to be honest, a lot of times. A Republican was going to win. And I think the GOP is also nervous about Trump being in office because Trump is unhinged. Trump has no allies in Congress, right? There's a few that kiss the ring, but he don't deal with none of them. You think he likes Ted Cruz? You think he likes Lindsey Graham? All of them are concerned, right? And I think for a lot of them, they would have rather had a Governor Christie or even a Nikki Haley in office, because at that point, politics can somewhat return to almost being rational, where they don't have to walk in the room and not know what they're going to get each and every day. Because folks kept trying to say, well, at least with Trump, you know what you're going to get. No, the problem is you don't know what you're going to get, but you know it's going to be something crazy. That's what you know you're going to get, something crazy. But every day, you never know what's going to happen, even when you're looking at him in North Korea, right? On Monday, he's calling him Rocket Man. On Tuesday, he's doing a speech. We want peace. We just want peace. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, okay, he said peace. So now I'm trying to sleep good for them 2 days with peace. 3 days later, Rocket Man best quit playing with us. Oh my God. Okay. Like in these moments, it's the worst time to live in DC, right? I'm like, I don't want to be in the nation's capital with any threat of war, please. I'd be waiting for the white flash sometimes, right? Man. Please speak on Marco Rubio. What up? Please speak on Marco Rubio being Secretary of State. Marco Rubio's an idiot. He doesn't need to be in charge of anything, right? He couldn't even pass legislation to make sure the kids weren't getting shot in Florida anymore at schools. Marco Rubio, though, I think, yeah, he's compromised. He has no backbone. The Marco Rubio of 2014, he would have still been terrible, but he would have been as terrible because he still had some element of integrity. At this point, Rubio, Ted Cruz, Jim Jordan, Lindsey Graham. I'm skipping some folks. I mean, those are the main ones I always had the most smoke for. Like them four, they're compromised. They integrity's out the window. Wherever the wind blows is where they're going, right? They don't care about their constituents. And now that Ted Cruz has just been granted another 6 years, buckle up, right? I just remember when Marco Rubio was at that town hall with the Parkland shooting victims, and they asked him to his face, like, would you stand behind legislation that would kind of regulate these assault rifles and these assault weapons? And he couldn't give an answer. To the kids who just watched their friends get blown into pieces. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody get shot by an AR-15, but there's not a lot of body left. Not to sound graphic, but even in that moment, he could not stand there and say what he would do. So yeah, that's that. Somebody said the Democrat Party needs to reorganize and pick new leadership. The stuff is just sad. Now I agree with that. I've been saying that for a minute. They need a flush, and I think they just got too many of the very like seniored leadership will not let go of power. Like, and I think that's kind of getting in the way of some things. But I also feel like they're not being realistic here. Like I'm seeing, like I said, all the smoke is about what Kamala didn't do, blah, 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 blah. Again, this was race and gender. That's all it was. And I hate that I was right with that because we talked about that. When I remember, I went through the numbers because the other thing is there's this assumption that white folks vote for Democrats. They don't, right? So when we talk Obama, because one of the things when folks used to try to argue me in the comments, especially white folks, we gave you Obama. No, you didn't. You want to know why? Because in 2008, only 45% of y'all voted for him. And in 2012, only 39% of y'all voted for him. And then when Hillary ran in 2016, only 37% of y'all voted for her. So no, like, they need some new energy up in there, right? I think when you're looking at just even the demographics by age, you need some younger energy in there, and that's both parties, honestly, right? You need some younger faces in there. Where's all the people that are like mid to late 30s and 40s, even early 50s? We got so many people that's 70, 80 up in there still trying to be in charge, right? Nancy Pelosi has been all up and through everything forever and a day. Now, I know she stepped down as speaker and she's kind of just going back down to just being in the House. But I'm like, why are you even still running? And it's not to sound ageist, but I feel like at this point in time, you've done what it was you were able to do. Open the door for somebody else who can come in and set up for the next generation, right? Because all the policy that they push or don't push affects the next generations after them. And my thing is, if you're not going to be around long enough to see the end result of the policy, maybe you shouldn't be making it. And I'm not trying to sound rude. I'm not trying to sound ageist, but you have entire waves of new demographics coming in as far as age and everything, but we're still at the mercy of what people that are coming out of the silent generation are doing, right? Even with Joe, I feel like if Joe was going to run, he should have ran in 2016, but I understand he didn't want to run because this is right after his son died, so I understood. But 2020, I was like, Joe, for real? You sure? Are you sure? because you're getting up there, but okay, right? I just know when I'm at a certain age, I'm not trying to be in charge of nothing. I feel like being in government is draining. It's exhausting. You can never be good enough. Even when you do the greatest deeds ever, somebody got a problem with it. You constantly are, especially if you're running for the House, you're constantly in re-election mode because people in the House only got 2-year terms. It's like you spend half the year campaigning, you get in the door, and then before you can even get any policy pushed through, you got to start setting up for your re-election campaign, right? And then it's like, it's draining. Why would you want to do that in your 70s and 80s? Right? Think of Dianne Feinstein, who died in office. She was about 84, 85. Like, I don't know. Some people just love the idea of power. I know when I'm that age, I expect to be at my lake house, sitting on the porch, listening to the birds, the Cardinals and the Blue Jays, drinking my nice ice cold sweet tea out of the jar. God willing, maybe there'll be some grandkids running around. But like, I'm not trying to run a country at all. That was the one thing that I enjoyed about leaving the center. As much as I loved working with the kids, I enjoy not having to manage adults. I enjoy not having to be the fall guy when something goes wrong. I enjoy not getting 2 a.m. calls about a fire needs to be put out or whatever else. I enjoy the fact that I can go to my current role, close that crap out at 5 o'clock and live life and not have to think about it until it's time to go back in, right? But make it make sense. Oh, I need to call my grandpa. No, I forgot. Okay, I'm gonna call my grandpa tomorrow. I normally call my grandpa on Sundays. I forgot to call yesterday. Rose said, Calvin, can you share more about opportunity zones, developers, and gentrification? Yeah, let me take a sip real quick. I forgot I had this tea. Every time I be getting the tea, I be forgetting I have tea as well. This one is the hibiscus one. Oh, that was good. Wait, I put the right kind of honey in this one. Hold on. All right. Hey. All right. Okay, so opportunity zones. I've done a video on this, but I'll talk about it quickly, just to kind of summarize it. But specifically, the video that I did that talks about it, it's some video I did with Lil Wayne from about 2019, somewhere in there. But here was the issue with opportunity zones, right? So Trump administration, they find over 1,000 locations around the country that are deemed opportunity zones. These are areas where there's poverty, high unemployment, not a lot of investment, not a lot of really great infrastructure. A lot of times, not even access to public transit. These tend to be food deserts. These tend to be areas where the schools may not be the greatest. These tend to be areas where violence is high. And so the idea was these would be opportunity zones. And what they meant by that is they would give money to grant opportunities to businesses to open up in these spaces to help boost the economy. Now, here's where the issue lied. Like, the idea sounded great until we got into the details. Now, here were the details. Details were, because you pretty much get a tax credit or a tax break for, you opening your business in this area. So let's just say, like right now I live in DC. So let's just say I took a segment of DC, I don't know, Bryant Street, right? So let's say I got a business on Bryant Street, or I live on Bryant Street. Like, so if I wanted to open a business on Bryant Street, they were going to give me like tax credits and tax incentives, right? But here was the gotcha. You already had to be a business that was established to a certain threshold of money coming in as far as revenue. In addition to that, you also had to have the revenue to construct or build whatever you were going to build, right? That automatically pushes out old boy who has the t-shirt business, or old boy who's selling the body oils with the vest, right? Because what ends up happening is developers come in first. And then the other issue was there were no line items in the policy that said once these businesses open, you had to provide jobs to the people in the opportunity zone. And so what ended up happening is a majority of the businesses that were opened in these opportunity zones were all in the realm of hospitality, hotels, right? Some of these luxury apartments and all these different things. And what ended up happening is the companies that moved in there, all they did was just bring their staff from different places and different cities and move them in there. And what ended up happening, I said it like 5 times, property taxes started going up because the value of the area went up because of those businesses, but those businesses weren't for the people in the area. And so it did nothing for jobs in any of these areas, right? The business owners in those areas actually did not benefit because it was actually business owners from outside the area that were looking to develop that came in and built new Marriotts and built new Hilton hotels and built new high rises under some of these companies that construct apartments like Avalon or WC Smith or Paradigm, and everything else like that. And so really it was for wealthy people. And the people who benefited from it were developers that already had money. And so it kind of helped to speed up the process of gentrification because, again, as property taxes go up, because now you've opened casinos in the area, you've opened entertainment complexes and everything in the area, the property taxes have gone up, right? And so that was the downside with the opportunity zones. Because there was no line item saying you have to hire people in that area, I think all the best jobs came in with the people. Like even on Amazon is out in the DMV now, right? They got a big old headquarters in Arlington. A lot of the best, and this did not count with the opportunity zone. This is just Amazon in general, right? A lot of the good jobs, the good 6-figure jobs that they had out there for Amazon were already line item and locked in. And so people were moving from Denver or Seattle or San Francisco specifically for that job. And those jobs were never even open to the people in the area, right? And that's one of the things you also see sometimes with, even when cities are always like, oh, we want to build a new arena and we'll let the taxpayers pay for it because it's going to bring jobs and everything. A lot of times, by the time the taxes and everything pay for everything, the city ends up losing money on everything. And it didn't really benefit the city. It benefits the developers and the billionaires that wanted to build their arena. And yeah, there's some jobs. Yeah, somebody's got to serve the fries and the Coke and give the nachos out. But as far as the good jobs, as far as being on the boards and everything else like that, that's reserved for the people already in the company, right? So that's kind of what that's about. Let's see here. I agree, BBB. Kamala touting her alliance with the Cheneys was an odd political choice. That I didn't agree with. Like, I get that you're trying to reach across the aisle, but let's not just start doing anything. I get that her approach was trying to show Republicans that were on the fence about getting with Trump, or even people who are undecided, that I can reach across the aisle. I can, we can make a coalition. But Liz Cheney is not somebody to make a coalition with, because when you look at her policy, she voted along the lines of everything Donald Trump supported at a rate of 90%. So she is the last person you want to bring in. If you were going to bring in if you're going to bring in a Republican to be in your cabinet or on your team, can you at least get one that wasn't in the way when stuff was trying to get put through? Right? I'll give Liz Cheney her kudos for going at Trump and everything, but other than that, policy was horrible. So I was looking like, yeah, that was not a flex at all to me, at all. Tyler said, the thing is, Kamala never made race and gender an issue at all, which is very true. She never really spoke on race, never really spoke on gender, stuck to the policy. But again, when it's put on you, doesn't matter. They're going to see that. Same thing with Obama. Can we name a moment when Obama shook the table with regard to race? Other than like we said, the Trayvon Martin moment, you can't think of any, right? There's nothing you can really pull up where he really was like, you know what, let me tell y'all something. Nothing. You got to go ask Michelle to go have a moment. By the way, I know Michelle Obama's like, don't y'all call me for nothing else. 2028, we will not see her. She will not be giving speeches. Y'all done made that woman come out of hiding after her mama done died, and she had her traveling all around the country. I guarantee you, we will not see her in 2028. She said, this is my last hurrah. Because I did this twice, and y'all keep playing in my face. So, yeah. So for the ones that keep saying Michelle should run, leave Michelle alone. Leave her alone. Somebody said retire at 70 or early. Well, if you leave it up to what's his name? Kirk. He was saying we don't need to retire. It's Charlie Kirk. He was saying nobody should be retiring if you're able-bodied. You work till you die. I'm like, what is wrong with y'all? That whole red pill movement, I'm like, y'all are killing me trying to do this whole macho super strength stuff. Y'all sit there and be macho super strength and work at 95 if you want to. I won't be doing it. I'm trying to not work now if I can find a way out of it. Somebody said Obama's hair turned white in 8 years. I couldn't be president because I wouldn't put up with all that. F all y'all. I ain't doing this. All right. Don Smart, what happened to the Zoom party, Calvin? We're gonna do it in December. I just I'm out of town this upcoming week. which is why I had to do this live today, because this could be the only day I can do it. Otherwise, y'all would have had to wait until after the 20th for a live. And then I'm hosting 2 events, like emceeing. Look, I be doing all kind of side hustles. I have an event. Technically, I have an event tomorrow night, and then I have another event on the 21st. I'm emceeing. And then the book club is the following Monday. So we'll do it probably that second week of December. Yeah. And the Zoom party, we just chopping it up. We hanging out, we laughing, maybe might do some games, right? It's a good time, right? We're not gonna be on there fighting. So if you don't come on here trying to argue politics. I don't want to talk about it, right? We do it enough on the live, right? I want to do some happy stuff. We are happy people, right? Somebody said the way it's going, millennials and down are gonna have to work well into the 70s. It might be our 80s at this rate. Like, man. My mom got lucky. She retired early. My mom retired at, I think she was 57. My mom has been living her best life, living it up. You know, she did the military and did the government, retired out of both. And so after my father died, she was like, I ain't working no more. I'm out. And she's just been living it up, having a great time. I was like, must be nice. She'd be getting on my nerves too, because she'll call me. I'll be at work tired. Hey, what you doing? In a meeting. Oh, well, I'm just watching the stories. Must be nice. She is living her best life. Let's see. Hotel workers were picketing in San Diego a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, Charlie Kirk, that was a person. Thank you, Dark Titan. How do I feel about Trump's mass deportation? Yeah, that's gonna be a mess. I don't see that really working too well, to be honest. And I think you're gonna see a lot of people who are actually citizens also get deported. That is gonna be chaos. That is, that's what the people voted for. But I think that is going to burn a hole in the economy. I think when the economy struggles as a result of that, especially with the food chain supply, people are going to be looking for somebody to blame. And I always say the next group in line, every time, it always comes back to us at some point. So I feel like somehow we're going to get tied to something crazy. We're going to get pulled into something we didn't ask to be a part of. I think the way of trying to remedy, let's just say they're successful getting people out, right? I feel like their way of remedying or trying to remedy the holes and the gaps that would exist within some of the industries where these people are no longer working because they're not there anymore is pretty much through the prison industrial complex. As long as that 13th Amendment is set the way that it is, prison labor. You currently have people that are in the prisons doing the license plates. Some of them working at McDonald's. Sometimes you see them on the side of the freeway picking up trash. I feel like they would just start moving them into the fields and into some of these roles that are not as glamorous. And I also think because, again, some of these private prisons and stuff also, they need money, right? It's a business. You're going to start seeing laws shift, right? And they're going to start trying to find ways to lock up as many people as possible. I feel like for Black folks, it's almost like going back to the era of black codes, right? Where they lock you up for any and everything. Oh, you don't got a job? Well, I don't think it'd be like that. But I feel like they're going to be finding any and every reason to start locking folks up. I know one of the parts of Project 2025 as well is harsher sentences for different crimes. So we'll see. But I think I don't see that running too smoothly. I don't even see that really being implemented in a way that they think it's going to be implemented. But I don't know. Ciao. Good luck, folks. Stay close to your loved ones. Linda said, Michelle left it all on the table. She is tired and so am I. And if I was Michelle, I wouldn't come back no more because I think Michelle's laid it out so many times. Like, stop using that lady. Y'all didn't like her when she was in there, right? Y'all keep wanting to paint her to be the hero, but y'all was giving her hell on earth while she was in there. Y'all talk about the lady not having no eyelashes and everything else. How do Americans literally believe age won't catch up to them? Oh, I don't believe that. Look, I tell you what, when I got sick during the summer and I couldn't eat for them 3 weeks and I lost all that weight, that was the first time I started thinking like, dang, man, You know, because when you're young, you feel like you could just do everything, and you just, man, that was a sickness there. I was down bad, so bad one time. I don't have a TV in my room, like, because I feel like my room is for sleep and other stuff. And like, I remember I had a TV on in here, and somehow I went to my room for something, but I was so like weak and tired because I didn't have enough calories. I had just been living off Ensure at the time. I just had to lay down, and my mom calls like, "What you doing?" I was like, "I'm just listening to the TV." She's like, "What you mean you listening to the TV?" I was like, "I don't have the energy to walk to the other room to watch it. It's taking too much out of me." Mind you, this was my birthday week, right? So like after that moment, I was like, okay, yeah, sickness is a real thing when it comes and gets you. Like you never know. You be thinking you're on top of the world because I had a great summer, right? I was in the gym 4 or 5 times a week. I put on a healthy like 15 pounds in 2024. Y'all saw I had a little piece of chest finally, and then lost it all in 2 weeks, all of it, right? They had me on so many Ozemprole and Zofran and all kind of drugs they had me on. Oh man. And that happened when I was relatively young. God forbid something happen when I get old. Oh man. Boondocks would have a field day with this timeline. They certainly would. I wonder what Aaron Magruder's up to. Might say COVID has long-term effects too. Yeah, COVID is messing up a lot of folks. I was seeing something that was talking about the cognitive effects that people have been having if they've had it more than once, and also what's been happening even with like cardiac things, right? And that, like, y'all remember, I was terrified when COVID hit because I think I told y'all that's when they found all these polyps. I always got something going on, right? They found all these polyps in my lungs around 2017, right? Because 2017, out of nowhere, I had walking pneumonia and a partially collapsed lung. And, you know, I remember it was 2020. At the top of 2020, like January, right? I had just went to do my physical, right? And my doctor was like, "Oh, I just want to kind of check your lungs, make sure everything's good." So they did all the scans and stuff. And there were more polyps, and some of them had metastasized. I was like, I know that word, metastasized. I used to see that on the Lifetime channel. And my mom used to be watching the movies, and the lady would have cancer or something. So I was paranoid. And it was the worst because that was the week that I was shooting my first music video it played a song. So I was like, stressed out on that shoot because I kept thinking, man, I ain't even about to be here. And then like 2 months later, COVID got worse, and I was so scared to catch that because I was afraid it was gonna take me out. So I was really in the house for real. Like y'all couldn't get me to go nowhere. Fortunately, polyps cleared up over time, thank God. But yeah, that was a scare right there. Let me see. Y'all still fighting about what race Kamala is at this point. The lady done lost. I don't even think it mattered at this point. Let's see. Somebody said I was Hercules at 46. Now at 51. What happened? Right. That's like when you be. It feels different when you like bump your knee or something now. Like I'm 36. I'm not that. I feel like I'm at the older end of young. Like I'm shifting into being like a real adult at this point, right? But I know when I like hit my elbow or something, it hurts a little bit longer than it used to, right? I'm like, dang, like, okay, right? If you don't have health, you have nothing, right? The way I was living off juices and berries once I started getting better, I kind of cleaned up too my diet. I was starting to eat a little terrible around that time too because I was so pressed about bulking up. So yeah, I kind of cut a few things out the diet. Yeah. Let's see. Lunar Deity, said, it seems that Dems will start to ignore Black people and focus on Latino vote, but that would not be a good strategy. And I think I just said it like maybe 30 minutes ago. Like, I feel like that's going to be what they're going to do. They're going to try to focus on how to win back the Latino vote. I just hope it's not at the expense of the Black vote, because, again, there's been one demographic that's been loyal every time. So don't play in our faces. Okay. I think that is the majority of the election that I want to cover. So you all can drop what other topics you'd like to cover while we're here before I go to bed. Grammys I really don't care about, to be honest, but it is what it is. Somebody asked me about Rihanna. I guess she pretty much is saying she ain't doing music anymore. I feel like music is not enjoyable to do right now because the industry is it's just not what it was. The money's not being generated, and the only way to make money is you have to stay on tour. Releasing albums brings you nothing, minus the streams, and the streams aren't even really bringing you the kind of numbers, right? And I think for somebody like Rihanna, who at one point, I don't think we remember how much they worked that girl when she got up in the industry, right? That girl was dropping an album every year. 05, she had Music of the Sun. 06, she had the Girl Like Me album. 07, she had Good Girl Gone Bad. They rolled that out into 08, but she probably did like 9 videos for it. Then 09 was Rated R, and then 2010 was Loud, and 2011 was Talk That Talk, and then 2013 was like she just had album after album after album and had to keep going on tours and all that. That stuff is draining, right? And then she dropped Anti in 2016. That's the last project we've gotten. I think for her, because she discovered the makeup and the other stuff, and it brings in the revenue without half the work. I think for her, she's like, look, I got 2 kids. I'm 36 or 37. I'm not trying to run around and tour and have to put on these random costumes and do all that anymore. And I think that's just a lot of folks. I think that's why even like Beyonce, you don't really see her promoting her albums like that. She just drops them and goes her merry way, and she markets whatever big business deals they have. I think a lot of these entertainers are utilizing capitalism with regard to purchase power for items outside of music because people don't buy music anymore. So that's why we're getting the liquor and everything else that they sell. I just think it's a different day, different age. I think Rihanna might drop a song here and there, but I don't think she's pressed to do another album. I wouldn't be mad at her. That's just the industry right now. And I think even for indie artists, if you're not touring, you don't make any money, right? You pretty much touring, like sales are not gonna, or if you can convince people to buy like your vinyls and stuff, but most of the money that like indie acts are making is from merchandise and touring, not from sales of their album. And then, people want music videos and stuff, and that costs money, but people don't really watch videos like that. So it's just a different day and age, right? Let's see what we're saying here. Calvin, what do you think about those strange robocalls being made across the nation of Black people telling them that they need to be scheduled to be taken by a van to a nearby plantation to pick cotton? Folks are such trolls. I haven't gotten any of those, but yeah, that's the other downside. The weird thing about this election is that there's a weird energy where folks feel like they got their gotcha moment, like, yeah, we're going to give it to you now. And it's weird because politics is supposed to be about voting for what you think will make the country flourish, what you think will make society enhance, what you think will make life better for people. But it's kind of turned into we're voting for making sure we make other people's lives miserable. So you got some people like that who are enjoying that. I saw people were getting letters and different things like that. There's always going to be trolls who enjoy these kind of moments. But, for us, I'd stay paid to us is that just tune it on out. Keep living life, right? That's the only way like something like a YouTube works, at least for me. I don't give energy to trolls. Like y'all notice, I'm never in the comments arguing with nobody. If I'm having a debate with anybody, it's usually a subscriber about something right? Like, Queen or like Avocado Queen or Belize Gal sometimes might not share my same sentiments on things, but because I know that they are coming from a place of love, we can have a healthy conversation about different things, and it's not me like, we're here, we see each other, right? No love lost. Versus some random Joe that just showed up in the comments and you African ape monkey something. Yeah, I'm not entertaining that. Like whatever, you know what I mean? So that's that. Oh yeah, rest in heaven, Candyman, aka Tony Todd. I believe he's the only boogeyman that can scare Project Kids and gangsters. I still will not say Candyman in the mirror, just to be safe, right? You know what's crazy? I never even realized that was him and Lean on Me because I was so used to the image of Candyman, and that I feel like that might have been one of the scariest movies growing up as a child. I just kept seeing that hooked by that girl's ear. That movie used to scare me. The new one I wasn't that crazy over, but yeah, Candyman. I don't even play them games, right? That's a game I don't even want to play, right? Man, yeah, there's been a lot of death this year, especially with like a lot of celebrities. Like we just lost Quincy Jones, right? Who, like I said, one of the greats. As a matter of fact, like for those who know me from before YouTube, like when I used to be on all the music forums, my username was Calvin Quincy instead of Calvin Michaels. And because they came from the Quincy Jones as far as music. But yeah, Quincy was a great one. He's still, again, my favorite. One of my favorite songs is the Brothers Johnson, "I'll Be Good to You," which is, a song he put together. I even like the New Jack Swing version with Chaka Khan and Ray Charles on it. But yeah, look, he left his kids well off. All of them kids each getting 80 million. Like, Lord, I've seen what you've done for others. Now, I don't want you to kill off nobody in my family, but if you can just drop a check in my account right now, right in this place, amen. And give a few to the people on YouTube as well, amen. No, I was kidding. Let's see. Video game culture. I'm not really into video games, so I'm out of the loop. I never even realized how popular the streaming folks were. Like the Kai, I forgot his last name, but yeah, that's some new stuff. I'm not into none of that, but good luck, enjoy. Man. Yeah, I haven't really played video games in years. And now that I don't work with kids either, I don't know what's out there, right? Sure, you said, but Beyonce was on tour. Oh yeah, she was on tour. 20, yeah. And I don't think we getting another one for like 3 years if she does do another one. What up, Nathaniel? Sarah said people love music. Yeah, like I truly believe this sounds so cheesy and corny, but to me, music is like the one thing that can always bring anybody together, even when you see the world differently. If you have something in common with like somebody else because you guys have a favorite artist or something, that's that one time where, I don't know, just think about like when you go to a concert, right? And you see the people who are the diehard fans, especially the front segment of the venue, right? People like, not even that, because sometimes the diehards just can't afford to get tickets and in the very back row, but they still having the time of their life. For that hour and a half to 2 hours, nobody's thinking about work. Nobody's thinking about whatever relative is sick that they're taking care of. Nobody's thinking about how the bills are going to be paid. Nobody's thinking about anything that's stressful. For that hour and a half to 2 hours, everybody's in there just living their best life, reliving the songs that they grew up on, the songs that they love in the moment, being wowed by the staging and the dancers and the singing and the lighting. And it's like this cohesive energy that's just really, really good, right? That's one of the things I love about music. Like even like I was saying with me and my godmom, that's where we click. That's actually how she took on to me, because most people's godparents, you meet them as children. I met my godmom at like 24, right? I stole her from my other friends. And so, yeah, we connected on music. One day, this is when people were still using iPods. She just was talking about how she likes her music and stuff. So I remember she had an iPod. I just remember I put a whole bunch of music out of my catalog on hers and gave it to her. And we clicked ever since then, right? I feel like music is something that can bring people together. It sounds cheesy right now in this current climate we're in, but it's reality, at least for me, right? Oh yeah, Judith Jamison from Alvin Ailey was an excellent female dancer. If you can, when they come, please go and see the Alvin Ailey shows. They're really, really good. They really are. I've seen them twice so far. My favorite set I saw, and normally when you go, they do 3 sets, right? They're always going to do Revelations as the closer, but they always do 2 different ones that are different each time. But the best one I saw, this was years ago. This might have been like 2006. They did this Earth, Wind, and Fire performance. It was so good. And by the time they got to That's the Way of the World, I was like, that was dope. Like it was so good. So see them when they come to your town. Somebody said food brings people together too. Yeah, food as well. We love to eat, right? That'd be the main thing. We will be at a funeral, hooing through that funeral. But as soon as it's time for the repast and the place be going, you pass, you be forgot you was crying, right? Yeah, food brings everybody together. Now I do miss that about working with the kids, because I know me and my coworker used to have competitions, like when we would like cook for like the whole center. Like we both had groups. Like I had all the boys, she had all the girls. We used to do like mentoring type stuff and different events. I'd take the boys on like field trips and stuff. And then at some point, we'd have a day where one of our groups had to cook for the entire club, and we would turn the entire center into like a restaurant. Like the kids would dress up, we would decorate the tables. You put the little lights up, turn some music on. I put the big old PowerPoint graphic on the TV with the moving water. And yeah, but we would like have the kids prepare a whole meal, right? And it was like such a fun competition, because I actually am a really good cook, believe it or not. And we used to just, that used to be so much fun. Like, I feel like cooking. Now, here's my rule of cooking. Don't cook for somebody if you are not cooking from a place of love, because people can tell, right? You can tell when somebody's made you a meal out of a place of love, right? There's just an extra element of effort that's there versus when somebody been through something together. Here, damn, right? Different space and time. All right. Ooh, avocado queen, you know you can always shake the table, huh? Calvin, what do you think the next 4 years will be like for Black kids adopted by white families living with white or with Black? I'm sorry. What do you think the next 4 years will be like for Black kids adopted by whites or live with white families or having little to no exposure to Black culture? I'd be feeling bad for them kids. I just, my thing is, if you're going to do interracial adoption, my rule is you ensure that whatever culture that kid has come from, you ensure that that culture is embraced. I don't like the idea of, and I get it, it's beautiful to adopt somebody, but it's also unfair to strip them of what it is that they come from, right? Or to ignore it. Like, I don't plan on adopting children of another race, but if I were to do so, I would still, let's say I adopted a girl from South Korea. If I adopted or a boy from South Korea, right? If I adopt kids from South Korea, like, I would still want to ensure that any element of South Korea that I can share with them or that I can learn about, if we got to go and take a trip over there, I'm going to try to make sure they get that so that they don't grow up confused about who they are, because people can say what they want. Race brings about culture, right? And culture, everybody has something distinctive about their experience. Even within the diaspora, let's say I adopted a kid from I don't know, Belize, right? Or I adopt somebody out from Anguilla. I would still want to ensure that the elements of where their lineage comes from, I'm still sharing as much of it as I can with them so they have an understanding of who they are. I think the worst thing you can do is try to just impose how you see the world on a child and strip away what it is that they come from and then have them growing up confused and lost, right? Because we've seen so many people who've had those experiences, right? And then when they finally get the Black wake-up call, you know, they are 10 toes down and turn into Malcolm X real quick, right? Because it's like you're almost playing catch up. So and we've seen so many moments, and I keep thinking of Hart, Devontae Hart. I know y'all get tired of hearing about the story, but that's the one that pisses me off the most, because in that aspect, they use his Blackness as a prop. Devontae Hart is the kid who was in the picture where back in 2017, when there were all the police protests and everything, he had the sign that said hugs, and he had the little hat and the leather coat on, and then you see the picture of him hugging the police officer with the tears. And people took that picture and tried to make it some symbolism, like, oh, he was just all about love and everything. When in reality, his two adoptive white mothers, right, were pretty much using him and his siblings as a prop. First of all, the kids were abused. And it's so wild because it was like, I saw right through it. Please go back to my Kylie Jenner Pepsi video, because that's when I was talking about it. And I was like, something ain't right here. They are over here propping this kid up and something ain't right in the water, right? And then it turns out these people have abused these kids. And then what did they do? They drove off the cliff and killed everybody. All the kids died, right? And I was so annoyed because one of the friends of the two parents, this is back before Devontae Hart and his siblings were killed, one of the friends left a comment on that video and was like, I'm so hurt that you'd say that about my friends, because I pretty much said that I feel like they're using him as a prop. This was just their experiment. Get the cool little Black kid and put him in all the cool, fun clothes that you think would be fun for him, that look really hip, and then send him out there to a police brutality protest because you don't like the fact that Black folks are calling out a system, and you want to come in here with all this love crap, because that's the one thing. Folks love to shut down a conversation about oppression or systemic issues with love. They love to do that. And so you prop and use the kid. So anyway, the friend was like, I hate that you had to say that about my friends. And no, Devontae's just a nice kid. He just loves to give hugs. I just see him, and every time I see him, he's hugging people, right? And Devontae ain't here no more. I wish that friend would come back on this channel and tell me what she thinks now. So yeah, I feel that with like interracial adoptions, like share your culture with them, but also let them have theirs, right? Anyway. Yeah, Waka Flocka. Yeah. Yes, I was thinking about the Stax Records documentary. That's a really good one too. I enjoyed that one. At the people working together, they never discussed race and made great music. Yeah, the Stax documentary was a really good one. I think it was on show. We talked about it. I want to say it was on Showtime or maybe HBO Max. I can't quite remember. But I loved when they got to the part about the concert in in Watts at the stadium. Yeah, the Quincy Jones documentary is really good too. Order of the Bees. I remember watching that one. Quincy has lived because he was definitely like 80 years old in that documentary, and they were still going to parties every week. He was going to every gala party. That man has lived, like lived. Oh, there's a Marvin Gaye concert on Netflix I've been meaning to watch. Well, thank you for telling me that. Maybe I'll watch that on the plane. I said, yeah, that's the Atlanta episode. I have a friend that's growing up who was a South Korean adoptee, and his adoptive parents were so nasty and indifferent towards him. I do not know why they adopted him. Some people don't need to have kids, to be honest. Like, raising a family ain't for everybody. Some people just don't need to have them, right? I don't like that kids have to be collateral to stupid decisions of adults. That's something that always will piss me off, right? We're about to wind down because I do gotta get in the morning. What up, Natural Empress? What else was I gonna share with y'all? I mean, that's really the main thing I had. Like I said, for book club folks, 25th instead of the 18th because I won't be here. So we got to do the 25th. I'm so sorry. We're reading. Actually, I'll grab the book real quick. We're reading the Rick James book for anybody who wants to join us. Right. Reading Blue, right? The autobiography of Rick James by David Ritz. So yeah, that's what we're reading. It's actually a pretty cool book. And then, like I said, what I normally do is I just post a Zoom link on the community tab, or you can always just go to my website and there's a tab specifically for the book club where you can click the link through there and it'll take you to the Zoom when it's time. I need to actually update the website and update my little countdown ticker. But yeah, you can just go to calvinmichaels.com if you don't want to wait for the link. Let's see. Somebody said I might have to catch the next book. Well, we just started this book for anybody who wants to still jump in. We're only 52 pages in. So, yeah. Are both of your albums available now? Man, first of all, they are available on everything, but Before Tomorrow, the album, for some reason, me and Apple Music been fighting. So long story short, there was a technicality we needed to fix, right? We fixed the technicality because we pulled the Before Tomorrow album down from everything. So you might have noticed if you were looking for it on YouTube, you couldn't find it for about maybe a few days. And it was re-uploaded to everything. So it's back on Spotify, it's back on Amazon, it's back on Tidal, it's back on everything. For some reason with Apple Music, there was still some kind of glitch with the cover art, and they kept requesting the cover art. But let me read the email that I got from the people today. It says, thanks so much for getting that to us. I've gone ahead and submitted this to our digitizing team. The update should process within 2 to 7 days. Please note that once an update is processed, it may not be visible immediately depending upon the site change and what was requested. We apologize again for any inconvenience. So the Before Tomorrow the Before Tomorrow album should be up before the week is over. But if you have other outlets, you can still listen to it on like Spotify and stuff. It's one of the reasons I haven't really promoted the albums yet, because I was like, let me get this thing back on Apple Music first. But yeah, the albums are still available everywhere else. You can stream them technically on YouTube. You can do iHeart. You can do, like we said, Tidal, Spotify. But iTunes and Apple Music for the Before Tomorrow album is on pause. But the After Yesterday album is available, right? I hate that had to happen, but it is what it is. I'm just glad that I own all my stuff and that, you know, I'm like where the buck stops. So I didn't have to go through 10 people to get stuff fixed. That's the one good thing, right? Oh, look at you, like chatting with friends reviews. Both my albums are on Apple. I just checked, but I bought them. Don't know if that's why. Well, thank you for purchasing. We love to see it. Yeah, if you purchase them on iTunes, then it's fine. But Apple Music, for some reason, well, let me look. Maybe they put it up already, but I don't think it's. Yeah, I was over here, and I didn't even know it wasn't on Apple Music. I thought it was back up. And then when I was at the fundraising event I was telling you about, somebody found out I did music, and I was sharing the stuff, and I was telling them it was on Apple Music. They're like, I only see one of them. I'm like, you only see one, so I didn't even know it wasn't on there. I was like, wait a minute, like these are supposed to already be back up, but such is life. Oh yeah, it's still not up there yet, so we'll see within the next 2 to 7 days. Hopefully within 2 and not 7. But yeah, I can't wait to kind of push and promote the albums. We got some more stuff down the pipeline, some behind the scenes stuff. How I made the music video, which was a lot of fun. The only downside was it was 97 degrees that day. That's why the church was open, because we was hot. Yeah, we kind of do some track by track, behind the scenes of how we did all that. But yeah, that's a cool thing. Let's see. Thank you, Raynette. Is the Rick James book available as an audio book? It's not, and I wish it was, because I would have loved. Well, he's not even here, but I would have loved to hear it in his voice. But yeah, oddly enough, it's not in audio. And I try to pick books that we can also get on Audible for people that don't sometimes either have the capacity to sit and flip pages, or they might not be able to get to the book in time or order it. Like I try to get books that you can get on Audible, so if anything, you can listen to it for the sake of time, like, because it kind of helps. Audible, you can speed up how fast they read it and all. So I know, like, sometimes with other books, if there's like a deadline or something, I only got 2 hours, I'd be like, speed this up to 2.5 times. And then the book be like, and then she went down to the store. And after she went to the store, I'm like, all right, and I'm taking notes. So, yeah. All right. Well, this has been a great live. Thank God I ain't had to cuss nobody out in here, because I came in on ready. But do I have turkey plans for the holidays? I don't know yet. I got like 6 options, and I'm trying to figure out which one I'm going to utilize, right? I'm not a big Thanksgiving person. I'll be honest, like after my father died, or transitioned, I don't like to say died, I'm not big on holidays like Christmas or Thanksgiving. And God willing, maybe, if I have some kids or something, maybe I'll care a bit more, but I don't really do a whole lot for like Thanksgiving and Christmas like that. I'll get all my god kids something. And I'll try to go and like visit family, but I haven't been a big holiday person for like 10 years. But I try, at least when I was working with the kids, I like to see the happiness on their faces when we give them the toys and stuff. But I'm not a big Thanksgiving, Christmas person. And even before my father passed, I really wasn't. I don't know. I liked seeing family and stuff, but I think for me, because so many members of my family have transitioned onward, I kind of get sad around that time, because I miss the days of when everybody was in Savannah at grandma's, and it's like, well, damn, half the people in the picture ain't there no more. And so that kind of makes me be like, eh. So I'm not the biggest holiday person, but I will figure out something. Yeah. Somebody said I'm waiting for the Calvin Michaels merch. I need to check in with my friend, is it Jill or Jason? I need to check in with Jason on that. Yeah, we'll figure that out too. That's supposed to be something coming down the pipeline. Let's see here. Thank you, Nicole. Said I love you, Calvin. I love all y'all. Love y'all. We be chopping it up in here for real. Oh, I'm sorry, NB. Said, yeah, I've been pulling myself together since my mom died, and not too long after my uncle's murder. Jeez. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I've had that experience. I got a few relatives that have been murdered, unfortunately. I remember, especially on my paternal side, I had 4 cousins die in 2 weeks, all shot and killed. It was kind of like gang violence, retaliation type stuff. And the worst part was one was killed at his own birthday party. That was a time. That was like 2014. I said, Lord. Somebody said, Big Mama house long gone, nice memories. Well, my grandma's house is still there, but it's just sitting there because my grandma passed in 2010. And so the house is sitting there. We don't use it for anything. It's probably falling apart. How is my grandfather? I just actually saw him 2 weeks ago. Grandfather is chopping it up. I know he's gonna talk my ear off about this election. Oh, he's gonna have a time. I need to call him tomorrow. Well, actually, I can call him tonight because it's only 8:51 over there. No, he's good. What I enjoyed about this last time I saw him is like, I've been kind of piecing together like the story of like my family, where both sides come from. Like my mom's side, my cousin Tiffany has been kind of giving me the rundown and been doing the background work on it. But my father's side, there's 2 sides, because my father wasn't raised with his father, which is my grandfather. So there's his maternal side that that's the side I grew up with. And then his paternal side is the side I've gotten to know as an adult. So he was just kind of giving me the rundown of like family members and who came from what. And so that was kind of really cool to hear. Like, and I was like, you know, I stayed turning on the voice recorder because I really believe in like capturing people telling the stories, like hearing them tell it, like the inflections in their voices and stuff, not just writing the notes, but like getting the whole thing. And so, yeah, it was a really good trip. I would like to get out there. I don't know how I'll be able to get out there one more time before the 2 years over, but I know I'll definitely get back out there again before the spring. And it's funny because now he calls me by my stage name. So, because all of us are Michael. Him, my father, and my grandfather were all Michael. So, or actually, my grandfather was Cole Michael, and my dad was Michael Cole, and then I was Michael Calvin. But yeah, he calls me Calvin now, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So one of my grandma's apartment is going things to the city. Yeah, that's that dang eminent domain, right? Probably what it was. But yeah, okay, guys, this has been really great. I want everybody to stay sane, right? Get into things that you enjoy. I don't want everybody to sit and harp on all gloom and doom. And it's not to say be blissfully ignorant, but it's to say that, you know, in order to make it through times where there's like periods of uncertainty or periods where you don't know what's happening or you're afraid, you have to balance all of that with things that you enjoy in order to kind of stay sane so that you have enough energy to make it through the nonsense. Because again, everything shifts, right? Pendulums go back and forth, different eras exist. And I'm like, listen, if our ancestors were able to get through some of the stuff that they got through, we will be fine getting through what we got through. I just think we're tired of always having to be the strong ones, right? You get tired of always having to be in defense mode and fight mode all the time. Like, damn, man, when can we just get a break in this mother, right? But yeah, stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well. And don't forget to check out my albums after yesterday and before tomorrow. All right, guys, I will see you guys. And yeah, I'll update you if we have any other additional videos this week. And like I said, book club, November 25th, and the Zoom party, we'll see you in December. All right, guys, good night.